surrounding Taiwan. NPR's Emily Fang reports the exercises simulated an invasion of the self-governing island.
Taiwan's defense ministry said it tracked 17 Chinese military ships and 125 aircraft, the highest number ever, on Monday, as China encircled Taiwan during the drill. China said the drills were retaliation for a National Day speech Taiwan's president gave last week, in which he pushed back against China's territorial claims over Taiwan. China says it dispatched its Air Force, Navy, and Marines, all to practice real-life capabilities of blockading and striking Taiwan. China said it successfully practiced all its objectives in just one day, but hinted it could mount another drill in the future in order to, quote, foil Taiwan independence separatist attempts. Emily Fang, NPR News, Taipei, Taiwan.
The presidential candidates are returning to the campaign trail this week. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump will rally supporters in Pennsylvania today. NPR's Asma Khalid reports, with the election just 3 weeks away, recent polling shows the race is extremely tight.
Vice President Harris and former President Trump are both visiting Pennsylvania on Monday. Harris has stops this week across the blue wall states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Democrats have traditionally relied on those states to win the White House. Harris's campaign says she's planning a series of events this week focused on black men, including an event with black entrepreneurs and a town hall with the radio host Charlemagne the God, whose show is popular with younger black audiences. The Democratic Party has long relied on huge support among black voters to win elections, but Democrats worry some voters may be drifting away from them. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 68 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A team of animal care specialists was dispatched from Massachusetts yesterday to offer medical care in North Carolina. GBH's Hannah Reale has more on the MSPCA's efforts to help out pets that were caught in the recent storms.
Everywhere that people have gotten hurt, animals have gotten hurt too. Mike Kiley with the MSPCA is offering that reminder as cleanup continues following 2 devastating hurricanes in the southeastern part of the country.
We've really been seeing a lot of tragedy, unfortunately, shelters that have been completely destroyed.
Kiley's asking Bay Staters to step up and take a dog into their homes if they can. The MSPCA is launching a no-fee adoption event.
And our hope here is that we'll be able to get as many dogs into homes as possible so that we can maximize our impact on the relief efforts for Milton and Helene.
100 cats and dogs have already made their way to Massachusetts after the hurricanes. The MSPCA is expecting hundreds more. Hannah Reale, GBH News, 89.7.
More than 16,000 homes and businesses are still without power in North Carolina. Well, don't look now, but we are less than 3 weeks from returning to darkness and despair, and not talking about the election here. In 19 days, on November 3rd at 2 a.m., we turn the clocks back an hour, ending daylight saving time for the year. Boo. And then 2 days later, on November 5th at 8 p.m., the polls will close and local and national elections, and the counting begins. So it's 19 days for the clocks, it's 21 days for the election. It's 53 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Solidigm, focused on making solid-state storage optimized for performance and efficiency. Solidigm believes a new era in AI requires a new approach to data storage. StorageForAI.com.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We have a new thing today. We are streaming live from Studio 3 in Boston. That's right. You can watch us in Brighton for the first time at youtube.com/GBH News. Jim got all dressed up for the occasion. It's going to be a big week for Boston Public Radio. The Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, is going to be with us. Astronaut Suni Williams is zooming in from the space station. We are so excited about that.
That's Wednesday.
That's Wednesday. The great comedian Jenny Slate is going to be with us on Friday, and the governor, Maura Healey, is going to be with us on Wednesday, and that's at the Boston Public Library. Tuesday and Wednesday and Friday at the Boston Public Library. Hello.
Hello, Marjorie. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Plus, each day at 11 this week, we will lead a debate, actually more like a conversation, on one of the 5 ballot questions, after which you can weigh in at 301-8970. If you go to the Boston Public Radio or my Twitter page, you can see which questions will be discussed which days. So we're starting today with question 5, whether to eliminate the state's tipped minimum wage model and require employers to directly cover the full minimum wage for all tip workers by 2029. Under current law, tip workers are paid a minimum of $6.75 an hour. If tips don't get them to the minimum wage for all other workers, that's $15 in Massachusetts, the employer must make up the difference. A yes vote on question 5 would gradually increase the minimum wage of tip workers until it meets the state's full minimum wage, as I said, by 2029. Tip workers would still be allowed to collect tips, but the employer could choose to pool and share the tips with cooks and others who don't interact directly with customers. A no vote on question 5 would keep the current tipped wage system in place. Joining us in Studio 3 for the yes side is Alex Galimberti. He's founder of One Fair Wage Massachusetts chapter and a former restaurant worker himself. Alex, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
For the no side, Doug Bacon is head of Red Paint Hospitality. He owns a bunch of restaurants. He's here on behalf of the Committee to Protect Tips, and he too is a former restaurant worker. Alex, Doug, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
So let's start with you, Alex. Why is this a good idea?
Thanks, Marjorie, and thanks, Jim, for having me
Sure.
here. So why is this a good idea? This is a good idea because question 5 would undo a system that is a legacy of slavery. The reason why there are certain sectors of the worker population that are excluded from the minimum wage is a legacy of slavery. It's workers in agriculture, workers in the service industry who do not get paid a minimum wage. So these exclusions created a system of inequity, a system that works for the very few, but the majority of workers that are working under this system are struggling, are not making a living wage, are having to rely on benefits. So while this works for the workers that are earning tips at the very top segment of the industry, while this works for restaurant business employers, a lot of workers are hurting. And this is very personal to me because we started this campaign actually 11 years ago when I was a restaurant worker here in Massachusetts, and it just didn't make sense to me why, as a restaurant worker in the state of Massachusetts, my employer could pay me $2.63 an hour at the time. Why we, as a professional category, were excluded from making a full minimum wage. And how come 7 states in the country get perfectly fine and have a robust restaurant industry without allowing such a system?
Okay, let's hold it there, Alex, if we can. So we just focus on the core arguments. Doug, you can respond to any of that you choose, but in addition, tell us why a no vote is the correct vote.
So first of all, the argument about slavery is entirely bogus. It's been disproven multiple times. Further, there is no sub-minimum wage in Massachusetts. Everyone is guaranteed under law to make $15 an hour or more. This proposal has been 100% funded by a group of activists from California. They spent $900,000, all money that was raised out of state, to put this on the ballot to suggest and propose that they know better how the industry should operate. If this were to pass, it would be a disaster for Massachusetts. It's bad for tipped employees. Servers and bartenders do not want this. They are not asking for it. In fact, they are actively protesting for no on question 5. It's very bad for small business owners. Many restaurants will close. We will be left with nothing but fast food and fine dining with nothing in the middle. Affordable restaurants will disappear. And lastly, for consumers, the most important issue that you hear from consumers today is rising prices, the cost of living, food, rent, fuel, insurance. Menu prices will go up dramatically. When this is fully implemented, if it were to pass, menu prices will go up 25 to 30% everywhere.
Okay, let's hold it there. Alex, for the yes side, in addition to responding to anything Doug had to say, particularly when you said you're not guaranteed a full minimum wage, my understanding is the law as it exists now says if you don't hit $15, combining $6.75 tip minimum wage and your tips, then the employer is required by law to raise you to $15. So there is a de facto $15 minimum wage for restaurant workers, is there not?
In paper, yes, but the reality that restaurant workers experience throughout Massachusetts and throughout the country is that the restaurant industry is one of the largest offenders of wage theft. I experienced that as a restaurant worker. I've witnessed many of my coworkers experiencing wage theft. And the way that this takes place, especially in a system with a sub-minimum wage, where it is oftentimes the onus of the worker to make sure that our tips are enough to bring us to the minimum wage and then bring it to the attention of the employer to make sure that they supplement it. Oftentimes those things fall through the crack, or sometimes there are employers that are taking advantage of this system and blatantly committing wage theft. There was a study by the U.S. Department of Labor under the Obama administration. They did a survey of the restaurant industry, and they documented 84% non-compliance of making the tip credit, which is assuring that workers are making the minimum wage. The Solicitor General of the DOL at the time, Patricia Smith, she declared that it was unenforceable for the DOL to go after all these employers that were non-compliant.
Let's stay on that's an important issue. How about that, Doug?
It's a bogus argument. The statistics that he is citing are for all 50 states. We live in a high enforcement environment in Massachusetts. The administration and other administrations have been very supportive of labor violation enforcement. In fact, restaurants would pay 3 times triple damages if they were found to be in violation of any of these laws engaging in wage theft. And there may be some cases where the activists can cite an example of someone who was not paid appropriately. It's far and away the exception. The vast majority of people who work for tips in Massachusetts are fairly compensated and, in fact, earn far in excess of minimum wage. I know because I was a tip worker for more than 10 years, and this business is not for everyone. It's not for everyone. Servers and bartenders work very hard. And some people don't do well with it. They can't handle the stress, the pressure, dealing with the public, and they tend to leave the business. The people who thrive and survive and deliver great hospitality tend to do well. They move up in seniority. They get better shifts. They make more money. The servers, and it's like a synergy between the guests and the servers.
Let me just say that is Doug Bacon. He wants you to vote no on question 5. Alex Galimberti is here urging you to vote yes.
Yeah, and I wish that Doug was right on what he's saying. But
I am right.
Unfortunately, the rates of wage theft are also high here in Massachusetts. It is something that the Fair Labor Division of the Attorney General really struggles to keep a grasp on. Here in Massachusetts, about 5.6% of the worker population are tipped restaurant workers. But the rate of complaints that the Attorney General offices get of wage theft cases are 13.9% coming from the restaurant industry. And most of those complaints regard tips. Now, these are the workers that are brave enough to come forward and complain about wage theft. But in an industry that employs an overwhelming majority of immigrant workers, people that are afraid of bringing forward complaints, a lot of these complaints go unreported.
But one other thing, we've all been servers here for many years. I have too for many years, and you have obviously.
Don't leave me out, Marjorie.
Yeah, you were at the Catskills there.
I was in the
with
Catskills.
all the vacationers. But one of the things that I know, because there is a lot of hustle involving it with waiting tables, and you can be a really good server, and you can make a ton of money. Yeah. And I think if you're a really good server that's counting on that, and a lot of single moms do this as a way to support their life with those restaurant hours and stuff, and you get somebody next to you that's really kind of screwing up, it would drive me, I think, a little bit insane that I'm working 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 tables, and they're kind of goofing up next to me, and I'm getting the same amount as they are.
Well, that's not true though, Marjorie, because this law would not require tip pooling. Tip pooling is when the tips are shared evenly amongst all servers. That is not a requirement of this bill. And also sharing.
But that's something that people are talking a lot about.
Yes, because that is an option.
Unfortunately, are actually encouraging tip pooling. And if you can see, Saru Jayarman, who is the founder of One Fair Wage, not only encourages it, she says it's going to happen.
Well, if we can be clear, we're going to do a little fact-checking, unlike what CNN did in the first debate. It's not required by the law should this become a yes.
But
correct?
The economics of having to pay an increased wage to front-of-the-house servers and bartenders likely would require restaurant operators to share the tips with back-of-the-house people, dishwashers, line cooks, possibly cleaning people, maybe even the bookkeeper in the office.
Well, does your group support that? Would you like to see the wages pooled and shared?
Well, so this is something that is very important about this bill. This bill gives the option of
But what is your
sharing
group?
the
What does
tips.
your group support?
Well, the option means that each business would make their own decision, and the workers are entitled to be involved in the decision. Now, what the opposition is saying, which is very unfortunate that they're relying on a campaign of misinformation, is that this bill would demand tip sharing. This is not true.
That's
that this
not true.
bill would make tipping averages.
Where does
go
it say that
low?
the workers are involved in the decision making about sharing the tips? In this?
It's in
They
law.
are not.
48
It's in
states.
Section 5 of this proposal, and the activists are not even aware. It's in Section 5 of this proposal that the owners will have control of the tips if this were to pass and can enforce a tip pool. The irony is,
Why are you against? By the way, you're an owner.
I'm an owner
So
because
if you don't,
I
but
worked
Doug,
for
if
10
you don't like
years.
it, don't share the tips.
No, I
Exactly,
worked for
that's
10
the option
years
of the business.
as a server and a bartender, and I'm offended by the idea that you go into a restaurant as a consumer and someone hustles and smiles and talks to you about the food and the options, and then if this were to pass, it's likely that your tip would not only go to the people in the front of the house, but in fact be shared with people that you have no interaction
But you
with.
could stop that. You're the individual
Yes.
owner could say
But
no.
hold on.
to
I
And the
just-
workers can
I just want to
stop
be
that
clear
as
on one
well.
thing, though. I know you say it's the option of the employees, but
Correct.
where is one fair wage on this? Are you in favor of this? Is that something you think would be a good idea?
We
or
are in
not?
favor of the layers of equity that this
Okay,
bill
so you're in
would
favor
brought
of
about.
pooling.
And the
That's
way
right.
that this would bring equity is that it will bring equity among states. There are only 2 states in the country where currently it's forbidden to do tip sharing with the back of house, and that's New York and Massachusetts. In all other 48 states, whenever all workers are making a full minimum wage, the workers themselves can decide on a tip sharing system that would include their back of house, their kitchen
That's
colleagues.
not true.
So
the
that
servers
a
would
line
not
cook-
decide.
Don't
It's in
talk over
Section
him. Let
5
it-
of the
let-
proposal.
Can I, Doug? I want to ask you about a comment you made before. You said, should this go into effect, restaurants would close, prices have to go up, etc.
That's right.
We had Evan Horowitz here, who did these wonderful analyses at the Center for State Policy Analysis on all 5 questions, part of Tufts. Here's what he wrote about these 7 other states, and now specifically the District of Columbia that just did this 2 years ago. Quote,
Which it's been a disaster.
Let me read what Evan, who is a neutral in this, says. Not enough time has passed to really assess the economic impact in Washington, meaning D.C., but early numbers do not show any obvious problems on the job front. There's somewhat fewer bartenders, an increase in waiters and waitresses, and earnings that are broadly consistent with recent years. What do you say to them?
That's not the data that I've seen, and I have seen reporting both in the media and by some think tanks that have done research into what has happened in D.C. And what I've seen is they've already lost 10% of full-service restaurant jobs.
I think that this is something that is unfortunately a misrepresentation, and I would like to see the opposition point to scientific data, because there's no data out there showing that states that have one fair wage plus tips, a full minimum wage for restaurant workers, have hurt in the employment sector.
But Alex, okay, so speaking of those 7 other states, my understanding is, and this is beyond dispute, it's been decades until Washington, D.C., decades since any state joined those 7 states with a full minimum wage, which is what you're proposing. If it's such a good idea, why did no other states in decades and decades decide to do what you're hoping to do here?
Thanks for bringing this up, Jim. I think that when Doug is saying that this is a campaign led by people from out of state, I'm here to attest that we started this campaign myself with a group of restaurant workers over 10 years ago here in Massachusetts. But what the opposition doesn't want to say is that all of their talking points and all of their strategy is coming from Washington, D.C., is coming from the National Restaurant Association, a lobby group that has had a tight grasp on putting a lock on no raises to the tip minimum wage at the federal level and at the state level. And that is why we actually resorted to coming to the ballot, because 10 years ago we started campaigning for this at the legislature. But the Restaurant Association knows very well, and they spend a lot of money on this, that all you need to do at the State House here in Massachusetts is sway the Speaker of the House, sway a chair committee, and a bill dies in committee and doesn't come to vote.
Doug, you want to respond?
Yes, the reality
Doug, you
is
want to respond?
our elected officials realize what a terrible idea this was and how much destruction it will cause. Affordable restaurants will disappear. We will have Fast food is completely unaffected by this. High-end dining, like the Capitol Grill, if you're going there to have a steak for $70, maybe it will go up $5. But if you're in one of my affordable restaurants and you want to have a burger for $15 and now it's $20, affordable restaurants will be wiped out in every city and town and main streets. And our elected officials realize what a bad idea this is. That's why they couldn't get through with this crazy idea from California. The reality is, it will destroy affordable restaurants in Massachusetts, and the activists are pushing for it with no support from servers and bartenders in Massachusetts. They can line up 2 or 3 people. We have hundreds and hundreds of people who are standing out at rallies, holding signs, contributing to our campaign. All you have to do is ask a server or bartender in your local restaurant. This will
Let's
be
stop.
devastating.
That's really important. How about that, Alex, in terms of the servers, bartenders themselves? Where are they on this?
Well, I think, when the restaurant owners have a captive audience and they tell their employees that a yes on 5 will cause them to lose tips, to lose their hours, when there's no evidence pointing to, of course, their workers will be afraid. Their workers will be intimidated. We have heard in our campaign that there are restaurants that are forcing their employees to wear no on 5 buttons. And this is really problematic. But these are the strategies that the opposition is adopting when we have a grassroots coalition that is consisting of restaurant workers, restaurant business owners, civil rights and workers' rights activists that are campaigning for this because we know that this will create more equity and make living wages possible for workers across the entire sector and not only the 1% of the high-end restaurants.
You could argue, too, as Alex no doubt has, that if you're paying the back of the house people a minimum wage, why not pay the front of the house people minimum wage? I mean, there's an inequity there.
You can have an argument about that, but the servers and bartenders want to work for tips. The people who hustle and deliver great hospitality in Massachusetts, they are very well compensated. For me, this is a feature of our industry. This is how it works great. And I was a server and a bartender for more than 10 years. So when I hustled and I worked hard and I had a busy shift, I would make great money. And this is what attracts the best people to our industry to work in the front of the house. If we change this system, pay everyone minimum wage and share the tips, you will get the same level of service that you get at CVS or Walmart or Target.
Well,
So,
there's
sorry,
the misinformation again.
Alex,
I
go
think
ahead.
Nobody wants that.
I mean, have you ever gone to a restaurant in California and received terrible service? Or
Yes.
a restaurant in Washington State, in Seattle, or in Minnesota?
I never go anywhere, Alex, so I had to
feel
stay local.
I feel like the
Massachusetts
tipping
is a
culture
unique place.
that we have
We don't want to be
is
California.
it's a national thing.
Do you worry, though, that people are going to tip less? I mean,
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because when we were collecting signatures for this ballot, the vast majority of voters that signed to put this on the ballot, when we explained to them the issue, they had absolutely no clue.
Okay, another
that
question.
Restaurant workers were making
Even if you don't think
$6.75 an
tips
hour.
will decline, do you agree that the cost to the owner of a restaurant is going to go up?
Slightly,
Okay,
yes.
and what do they do to defray those costs? What would you recommend they do to defray those costs?
The same thing that successful restaurant business owners such as Doug always do. When his rent goes up, does he have a way to stop that? When the price of gas goes up, restaurant owners are resilient and they know how to do this. And that's why this law is written in a way that is a gradual implementation. It is a slow phase in that restaurant businesses can adapt. And, Doug, you raising the price of your hamburger by $5 over 1 year, that's price gouging, man. This increase would require, if a restaurant to increase their menu prices by 10% over 5 years. So if you're phasing it in, that is much less than that every year of this implementation.
I just want to reintroduce you guys so people know what we're talking about. We're talking about question 5. That's the question on the ballot, debating the minimum wage for tip workers. That's what you're going to be deciding in the November election. We're speaking with Alex Galimberti. He's the founder of the organization's Massachusetts chapter and a former restaurant worker who wants, one fair wage, who wants to change this. He's representing Yes on 5, and Doug Bacon, head of the Red Paint Hospitality on behalf of the Committee to Protect Tips, representing No on question 5. Alex, I wonder, Jim and I were talking about this before you came on. Lately, I think post the pandemic, you've been seeing certain service charges on your bills. And some, if they're a big party, they're a lot. Maybe they're a smaller party, there's something. But I think the customer looks at that and sees there's a 5%, 10%, 18%, and they're going to tip less. Where does the service charge
100% they will.
fit in here?
Yeah, I think that is a problem. That the mandatory fees that some businesses are charging across sectors, of course, it's not only the restaurant industry, but it's become an endemic problem, right? You go anywhere and there's fees, and this is something that was one of the biggest disruptors in the implementation of one for wage plus tips in DC. It's because the Restaurant Association cooked up an idea to put mandatory surcharges so they could make up the difference. So then when there is a surcharge on your check, when you're dining at a restaurant in Washington, D.C., once this implementation started and the surcharge is 20%, customers were assuming that was the tip. But that was not the tip. That was the restaurant making up the difference of the higher wage that they were having to pay. And the Attorney General in Washington, D.C. had to crack down on this and pass a rule mandating that any fees that a restaurant or other businesses put on their check has to be clearly explaining what that fee is going to
But we're
towards.
seeing those
Transparency in fees.
in Massachusetts, where the minimum wage is not gone up yet. So
Correct.
why
So
are
the
we seeing
federal
here-
government is also looking at the widespread implementation of fees, and the fees that the restaurant industry is putting on checks is going into the widespread investigation by the Federal Trade Commission on bogus fees. Right? Biden has
Hold
a
it.
campaign
What about
against
You
the
wanna
bogus
respond to
yeah,
this,
what about
Go
those
ahead.
fees?
Sure. So in DC, there was a dramatic increase in labor costs. Operators are trying to figure out how to make it work. And in some cases, they've added on a service fee. And consumers are saying, well, now there's a service fee. I'm not going to tip. Here's the other thing. And you see this all over message boards, Reddit, comments in the newspaper articles. Consumers are saying, oh, now servers might get paid minimum wage. That's great because I hate tipping and I'm not going to tip anymore. So consumers are already saying they're going to stop tipping or they're going to change their tipping behavior if the wages go up, the menu prices go up, and service fees are added. Bartenders and servers do not want this system to change. They're very well compensated. Under the model that we have, they hustle, they work hard, they deserve it. It's not an easy job, and it's not for everyone. So I think the system works great as it is. I'm able to retain people. I have people who work for tips who've worked for me for more than 20 years. They've raised their families, they've bought homes, they've thrived, and they want to see this system stay the way it is so that they can continue to
You have
thrive.
a lot of regular customers, I'm guessing?
Tons.
And a regular customer who comes to your one of your restaurants on a regular basis knows that Jane or John is their server. All of a sudden, starting January, they're going to not tip that person anymore because they read in the paper that there's now by 2029 there's going to be a $15 minimum wage rather than a $6.75 minimum wage.
That's a fair point. Some of those customers may continue to tip the same way, but many consumers will not. And the regular customers, I think you're right. Some of the regular customers will continue to tip the same way, but all of my customers are not regulars. In fact, I have 5 locations just in the neighborhoods of Allston and Brighton. And we have people coming and going, and we have a lot of regulars. But over time, prices will go up, consumers will become aware, and behavior will change. We know that's a fact.
I think that's a scare tactic because saying that tips will go away is just something that there's no evidence towards. Customers are not tipping less in Washington, D.C., and they do not tip less in the 7 states that have one for wage. And I don't know any customer that asks to their server, how much do you make an hour before deciding how much they're going to tip? Do you calculate that you're going to tip differently if you're in a different state? And the numbers show that the average tipping rates in states that have a full minimum wage are oftentimes higher than in states like Massachusetts.
Okay, let me hold you there. Gentlemen, why don't you take each, starting with you, Doug, take 30, 45 seconds, sort of wrapping up what you think the primary reasons why people should vote no are, and then Alex will ask you to do the same for vote yes, please.
Everyone should absolutely vote no on question 5, and here's why. Local neighborhood affordable restaurants will be devastated by this. We don't just compete with other restaurants. We compete with grocery stores, takeout places, DoorDash, Uber Eats. We compete with anywhere people can get food. When the prices go up, consumers look for alternatives. Our sales will go down, costs will go up, the middle of the industry will be wiped out. Every city and town will lose affordable restaurants. Please vote no on question 5. Servers and bartenders are not asking for this change.
Do you have a website, by the way?
I do.
What is? I don't mean you personally.
ProtectTips.org.
ProtectTips.org. Alex, if you have a website in your final thoughts, give us that too, please, if you would.
Yes, thank you. So the reason why the voting public in Massachusetts is widely supporting yes on 5 and why I urge the listeners to vote yes on 5 is because question 5 is important because it brings about fairness for workers. It gives it protects workers from economic instability, from the constant danger of sexual harassment and other forms of discrimination, and from wage theft. It is also fair for consumers because consumers are not going to be so much in charge of subsidizing the livelihoods of restaurant workers, not only through tips, but also through benefits that a lot of restaurant workers have to rely on. And it's also fair for employers. We have employers throughout the state that want to pay one fair wage and want to be able to share tips with the back of house, but they cannot do that at the moment, and they are put at a competitive disadvantage, so it would level the playing field to have one fair wage for tips. Okay. All industries have to pay a minimum wage, so should the restaurant industry.
What's your website?
And check yeson5ma.org.
Yeson5ma.org.
Yes.
Gentlemen, we thank you both. We really appreciate your time today, and hope people check out your websites and learn a lot before they vote.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very, very much. We were talking about question 5, the minimum wage for tipped workers. It's on the ballot. In November, we were speaking with Alex Galimberti, founder of the organization's Massachusetts chapter and former restaurant worker, representing Yes on 5, and Doug Bacon, who owns a bunch of restaurants right around here, to find out which ones they are before you leave, Doug. Red Paint Hospitality on behalf of the Committee to Protect Tips, representing No on 5. We're going to be opening up the phone lines to you guys and text lines at 877-301-8970 to the top of the hour. What do you think about question 5? Should tip workers be paid the full minimum wage or not? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Today is Quiet Monday on GBH. It's the middle of our fall membership drive, but we're taking the day off from the long fundraising interruptions. You can help us bring you more of the news with a little less on-air fundraising by giving during Quiet Monday at gbhnews.org. And make a gift in the amount that fits your budget, and we'll send along the morning edition All Things Considered tote as our thanks. This is special just for Quiet Monday. That's gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.org. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And The Huntington, presenting Nassim, a theatrical demonstration of how language can both divide and unite us. Each night, a different VIP performs, from Tony Shalhoub to Mike Gorman and more. Tickets at huntingtontheater.org. And Johnson & Wales University, committed to going beyond the classroom by helping students develop networks, obtain real-world experience, and providing hands-on learning that makes an impact. More at jwu.edu. And Boston Children's Hospital, ranked the #1 pediatric hospital in the world by Newsweek. Boston Children's, where the world comes for answers. bostonchildrens.org/answers.
Elizabeth Warren is seeking a third term in the U.S. Senate.
This is my whole life's work, how to help working families.
But challenger John Deaton thinks it's time for a change.
In the Senate, we need an independent voice.
From NEPM and GBH News, the Massachusetts Senate debate. We'll hear from the candidates on why they feel they should represent the Commonwealth and bring you exclusive post-debate analysis. Thursday night at 7, here on GBH 89.7.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan. For the first time ever, we're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News from Studio 3 in Brighton, we had to clean it up quite a bit. Of course, we didn't clean it up. A coworker cleaned it up. In any case, we're back at the library tomorrow with Attorney General Andrea Campbell and our second ballot debate question, question 4, about legalizing certain psychedelics. We will do that debate at 11, and just like we're about to do now, right after the debate, we will take your calls. Our text segment today involves J.D. Vance's continued intentional election denialism, refusing in a recent New York Times interview 5 times to answer whether Trump lost the 2020 election. Text us your thoughts at 877-301-8970. If you're just tuning in, we heard arguments for and against changing the tip wage model in Massachusetts, and now we're throwing the conversation to you. 877-301-8970. Should tip workers be covered for the full minimum wage? How are you going to vote? Yes or no? What do you make of the proposal that employers can decide to pool tips with back-of-house employees who don't interact with customers? And if the ballot question prevails, would knowing that servers are paid $15 an hour as a minimum wage change your tipping habits at all? 877-301-8970 is the number.
We have a couple of texts.
Yep.
Brian from Paxton. I ran restaurants. You're backed by a restaurant group and Legal Seafoods in Boston. For 35 years, the margins are way too tight. This payroll issue will cripple most restaurants. And several people who are servers say that it's not true that they always get that the makeup between what they make, the $6.75
Well, that's what
an
Alex
hour
was saying,
and the $15 an hour is a lot of wage theft. So they would like to see this happen.
Let's go.
Kathy in Salem. Thanks for calling, Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi. Oh.
You called us.
Go ahead. You're there. You're on,
well,
Kathy.
I'm not from Salem. That's all.
Oh, where are you?
I'm in Lunenburg.
That's close enough for us.
Okay.
Same state. Welcome, Kathy.
That's right.
Sorry we made a mistake. Welcome.
Oh, hi. So listen, I was listening to your guests, and they were talking, the guy in the no vote, Doug, because he was talking about how, the front desk staff works so hard, and he used to be a bartender and a waiter. Yep. But the people in the back work really hard too, and I did think that was a little frustrating to hear that why would you want to share with the dishwashers or the line cooks who make your job hopefully good out front.
How you voting?
How
you voting on this?
You know what? After that, I'm just kind of pissed. So I'm thinking of voting yes because I'm not mad. But
Whoops.
I think we
I'm
lost
so
her.
sorry. I think we inadvertently. Kathy, thank you. Cut her off. Sorry, Kathy. Thank you for your thoughts. 877-301-8970. You just heard a conversation, a debate about question 5. We want to know how you plan to be voting. By the way, early voting starts this weekend in Massachusetts, not just on candidates, but ballot questions. Judy in Nashua, New Hampshire. I hope we have the right city for you. Hi, Judy.
Actually, it's Manchester.
No, that is not true. Oh, my God.
We have new
Hi,
phones,
Judy.
so we're getting adjusted.
Sorry, go ahead.
But anyway, I have no skin in the game, but I'm going to comment anyway.
Sure.
I don't like tipping. And many European countries that you visit have a no tipping policy, and it seems to work for them. My other comment, though, I've been thinking about it. To tip and to decide on the amount I tip, the owner of the restaurant is making me responsible for the decision regarding who is a valuable employee and who is not. And that's not my responsibility. It's his responsibility. If somebody is working harder, pay them more.
Something's wrong with the phones. Our apologies.
That's where the tips
we didn't
come
intend
in,
to cut you off.
I mean, if you have a really good server, you tend to pay them a bigger tip than you do.
No, but she's saying, why should I decide? The employer should decide, she says, instead of having the tip be the determination.
But the employer's giving a minimum, and then the because you're not going to be able to...
That's her problem, is her point.
Right.
Let them decide if someone should get extra money,
Well-
not me as the customer. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just saying that's what the deal is. Teresa, it says you're in Beverly. I assume that means you're probably in Ohio or something. Where are you? Oh, and the radio's on. This is a nightmare. Teresa, we're going to put you on hold. You got to turn the radio down.
I think that's the previous person.
No, it's a different person.
It's a different
Teresa,
person.
yeah.
Okay. Teresa, do you have your radio on?
That was Teresa. Okay, Teresa on hold, please, you guys. And let's try somebody else who doesn't have the radio on. You have to turn your radio down. I think most of you know when you call us here. 877-301-8970. This is unbelievable.
Scott in Brookline says the fact that most tip workers do not seem to want this seems like it's very much a solution in search of a problem.
We should be clear about this. I'm not quarreling with anybody's representation. Doug Bacon, representing the no side, is the one that asserts that is the majority of servers are against it. So, and that may be the case. I just don't know firsthand.
Okay, here's another server, a former tip worker here. Tips are often weaponized by employers and used as an excuse not to get better conditions for employees' experience. And the no guy, says he's now a yes person because of the debate.
Okay, 877-301-8970. I'm not even going to say where you're from. Vera, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi there. How are you?
Excellent.
Fine, thanks.
Thanks for calling. What's up?
Well, I waitressed for 150 years. I'm retired now. But
fair enough.
It seemed like 150
I'm
years.
sure.
No, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. However, why would I share tips with people who, in the kitchen, many of whom are verbally abusive, many of whom throw things when you order more than one club sandwich at a time? You know, and also we deal with people, for example, pushing you on your elbow to say, I could have your job. That's a customer. So we deal with all kinds of happy and nasty people all day long. We deserve the tips we get. Why does the dishwasher, God bless the dishwasher, who doesn't have to deal with that, deserve my money?
You know,
and
Vera,
why does the terrible waitress who I work with, and she's awful, why am I going to share my tips with her? Not going to happen. I think if that goes through, you will see people quitting in droves.
Vera, that was a fabulous call. Can I just make one?
I'm so glad you called, though, because it is true. I mean, I was waited tables for, I guess, 6 years. You do take a lot of abuse from the back of the house.
Well,
no
yeah, in some cases. But let's be clear, Vera, one thing, again, about what the ballot question says, should it become law, doesn't require the owner share pool tips once the full minimum wage is reached. It allows them to. It's in the discretion of the owner. Vera, that was a fabulous call. She is voting no, obviously. 877-301-8970.
Okay, where are we going now?
Phones are a little screwed up, so give them a second
today. Here. Okay. I voted yes on 5 because I think it's fair to workers. It won't change my tipping either. Also, I did not like... okay, there was...
Would it change your tipping behavior?
No, but you know, I have to admit,
what do you have
I
to
think
admit?
a lot of people that are bartenders and wait staff think of themselves as professionals at that, and some people are really good at it, and some of it are not. And I think it would be hard for people that really do hustle and work really hard, as Vera just said, to see the person next to them that's sloughing off wind up with the same amount of money. I mean, I just think
the same amount of money is the same minimum wage, not the same amount of money.
Well,
they still get bigger tips if they're doing better.
Tips.
No, above the minimum wage, the pool.
Yeah, but Jim, if you're pooling tips at the back of the house, you're going to be pooling tips among the wait staff. It's not going to be, and I think that's the problem. I mean, it's your professionals. It's my same problem with teachers. To me, the people that are the excellent through-the-roof teachers should get paid a ton of money, and those that are just phoning it in.
Well, it's funny. You know, my position is on teachers. We should tip them. They should be tipped. There should be a tip minimum wage.
Yeah, you can get
and
the
just
parents,
tip the ones you like.
Everybody knows who the best teachers are. The parents and the kids can tip them. But seriously, I think people think of it as a profession. It's not just loading things onto an assembly line or something.
So we're taking your calls and texts on question 5. And I want to remind people who just tuned in, every day this week, we will be debating, or at least having a conversation with the yes and no sides of each of the 5 ballot questions. They'll then be posted online at gbhnews.org. There'll actually be video with them here. And if you go to either Boston Public Radio's Twitter page or mine, it will explain to you which of the next 4 ballot questions are which day later this week. Where do you want to go?
And one last thing.
Yeah.
When the people in the back of the house make mistakes, the steak is overcooked, they didn't give them the right meal, they screwed up the brochette or whatever it is, it's the server that's out there having to explain the mistakes and the screw-ups of the kitchen to the public. It can be very stressful. Barbara in Sturbridge. Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Hi.
Good. I'm going to be voting no on question 5.
Why?
I've been a server for over 50 years.
Oh.
And I still work at my profession, and a tip is something that you give the server for the wage that you're paid by the house is that pays you to show up and to move that product for the restaurant to the customer. And how I do that to the customer is what I get tipped for. And I would not like to have the house be able to say whether or not I should share my
Barbara, how
tip.
good are you at what you do?
She's great, I can
I'm
tell.
very good at
I knew you were.
very good at what I do.
I have a feeling that is true. Barbara, thank you for sharing your perspective. We appreciate it. 877-301-89. I'm laughing because we have a new call screening thing. I don't know what the colors mean. I don't know what anything means. There are more lines, apparently. Do you know what's going on?
Not really. No,
Good.
I don't. But
We generally
I think the red means that they're next.
Well, let's try it.
Veronica is lit up in red, so we assume it's
She's
Veronica.
in Worcester, we hope.
Hi, Veronica.
Hi, Veronica.
Hi, how are you?
We're excellent. Thank you.
All right. So I'm calling because I'm a former server, and just listening to the two of them speak, my plan is to vote yes. I believe that if you get a fair wage like everyone else, I wouldn't mind not getting tips. And what Doug said about hustling, I like how he used that word. I would call it more killing yourself for it. And a lot of times you don't get any tips. People say, well, then choose a different job. And you mentioned, single moms trying to work. You don't have that option. You go into this industry because there are no other options. There's a schedule conflicts, many different reasons. And it's a little concerning that many servers calling in saying that they're voting no, sabotaging themselves, because how are we going to listen to a multi-restaurant owner on his argument about it? Of course he doesn't want it to pass because it's less money for his bonus, his own paycheck. So it just, being a former server, you see all the things that you have to go through, and plus you have to tip out the bar, you have to tip out bussers. That's what you're busting your butt for tips. And a lot of people don't understand that.
Veronica, that's another great.
It's just your choice for this job.
That's another great call. Thank you. She's voting yes, Veronica in Worcester. Thank you very much.
But now
for
you'd be
your call.
busting your butt for chips for the person next to you.
877-301-8970. By the way, I am not of the belief that the vast majority, I don't have any data, this is my opinion, that the vast majority of restaurateurs are not going to choose to share with back-of-the-house people. I don't mean that most of them don't care about those workers too, but their face are the front-of-the-house people, and my guess is they'll probably lean in that direction, but they are permitted under this thing. Should it become law? We should have explained this at the beginning. This would become a law like any other law. Should 50 plus 1% of the people of Massachusetts buy it, and then the legislature can do nothing with it or change it like they change any other law or go on a 5-month vacation, one of the three. Neil in Easton.
Hi, Neil.
Hello, Neil.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm so excited to be on with you guys.
Well,
I
thanks.
am a restaurant, a small independent restaurant owner in Easton, Massachusetts. I am sitting doing my payroll right now, and I've got a spreadsheet. And I annualized the cost of what this would mean to my restaurant, and we're looking at about $189,000 increase in operating expenses annually if this were to pass.
How many workers do you have, Neil? How many servers? How many workers?
We have about 50 employees. I've got about 20 full-time, hourly, if you do the math, about 20, 40-hour-a-week employees that work on the floor that would be tipped. Every one of my employees is strongly against question 5. Every restaurant owner I know is strongly against question 5. Every server I know, and I know lots of them, are strongly against question 5. The people that we have working here make well over the tipped minimum wage, and based on what's happened in other parts of the country, the data that we've seen is very, very scary about what's going to happen to us and my fellow colleagues. I mean, we're not these big multiple chains. I don't have 5 restaurants. I'm one of those independent restaurant guys, that we pay bills, we pay our staff, and if there's anything left over at the end of the month, we pay ourselves. And if I get a $189,000 hit to my bottom line, there's not going to be much left over to pay myself.
Neil, if you want to, you can say the name of your restaurant. Don't feel obligated.
No, my restaurant thanks. My restaurant's McGuire's Bar and Grill in Easton.
Great.
And we're doing everything we can to just hopefully, I mean, we are really scared about what's going to happen.
Neil, we really appreciate you calling. Thanks so much for sharing your perspective. It means a lot to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil.
877-301-8970 is the number.
Let us go now to Rory in Canton. Canton. Hi, Rory.
We think. Hi, Rory.
Hello, Jim. Hello, Marjorie. It's actually Hanson, but I wasn't saying it. You're very, very wrong on that one. But
so sad.
Oh, my goodness.
You notice what Rory said? We're not wrong. We're very wrong.
We're very wrong.
Go ahead.
They got the same number of syllables, Rory. We got that part.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Rory.
It's GBH. You know,
we do the
best
we
can. The big bucks.
Go ahead.
That's right.
So I'm just going. I work at a very high volume restaurant. I used to be a no on this until I actually read the initiative and fully understood that tip pooling is not a requirement.
It's not. You're right.
This. Yeah. So you can't put the emphasis on that because so many restaurants are not going to do that. The restaurants are just going to do the bare minimum to comply, which is just pay people more. That's really it. So like, I look at it like, some places that do pool tips, they're actually doing pretty good. Like my partner actually works at one of these places and she does great there. And I think it puts a higher emphasis on the quality that you're getting from your staff if you are doing a tip pool. Now, pooling back of the house, it doesn't say what percentage that has to be. So I would be fine with tipping out back of the house like I tip out a busser or a bartender, etc. But I mean, there's so many other reasons to do this as well. Like, for instance, our restaurant has 401k, it has health savings plans, but we can't contribute to that because we only get paid $675 right now. Like, if we got paid more, there'd be more going into the 401k, the $675. That would actually be a viable thing for us. But none of us qualify who are on our tip staff because we don't make enough on the actual check.
Hey, Rory, sorry we got your wrong hometown, but we're really glad you called. We have a lot of calls, so we're going to try to get to them. Thank you for making yours. 877-301-8970. Mark in Kingston, Massachusetts. Welcome, Mark. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I am a partner in a small independent restaurant, and everyone assumes we print money in this business. We don't. Our margins are very small. If we can net 2 or 3%, a year, we're doing real well. And this would probably eliminate that profit, and it would probably push us to the point where maybe it's time to sell. Maybe the strong survive. My wait staff will make $30, $40, $50 an hour with their tips. Plus, they get their $675. They're well compensated. In the back of the house, my dishwashers are making $22 an hour. I have a couple cooks that are making $100,000 an hour. We are paying our
$100,000 an hour.
Admirably.
You mean
$100,000 a year.
Okay.
A year.
Hey,
so
Mark.
I'm voting no on this.
You too can say the name of your restaurant if you choose. No obligation if you want.
Well, it's the Charlie Horse. We've been there for 40 years.
Great. Mark, thanks. Good luck. We appreciate your call and your perspective. 877-301-8970. You're talking about question 5.
You know what's interesting that we don't really know the answer to?
What's that?
Why has this started? Michigan is about to become the 8th state across the country that's adopting this tip wage thing. You know what? Was there some impetus initially that got this going?
Alex said they've been working on it for 11 years.
Yeah.
So it's not just now. But it's true. The 7 states that have it have had it for decades. The only new addition that's already started implementation, I think it's a 5-year phase-in, is Washington, D.C., which is in year 2. Ellen in Braintree, hello.
Hi. As a server and a bartender for years, a lot of why people come back to restaurants is specifically because of the wait staff. And if you were going to put it into a sales category, you don't expect the salespeople to share their commission with the people in the warehouse. And it is a lot to do with what is being seen out front, how presented it is, how positive it is. Even bringing in your own friends to come and service the place or to patronize the place has a lot to do with it. And the other flip side is when, waitresses sometimes like show up to work and they have absolutely no idea what they're going to make that night.
Right.
And there could be no customers. There could be a snowstorm and nobody's giving them part of their salary. So I realize that it's not necessarily said that it has to be done, that it's pooled, but the implication is going forward that it will be pooled. And another thing, 1 in 2 restaurants go out of business that are just startups. So we're going to be left with just chains.
Yeah. Hey, Ellen, thank you for the call.
You.
Appreciate
That's one of
it.
the points that No Side made, too, that it's going to wind up being chains that can afford this kind of thing, and small mom and pops maybe would struggle more.
Can I explain one more time before we leave this what's going to happen? We're doing a question a day. There are 5 ballot questions every day this week. Question, is it 4 tomorrow? Is that the legalization of psychedelic drugs in certain circumstances? Here's how it's going to work every day this week. First of all, you go to our Twitter page or my Twitter page. You'll find out which question is being debated which day.
Tomorrow is where are you on magic mushrooms?
Well, that's in part what it is.
That's right.
11 to roughly 11:30, we'll have the 2 sides debate, or at least discuss the issue. And then, like we just did, 11:30 to 12, we'll take your calls and texts and that sort of thing. Also, all of this will be available at gbhnews.org if you missed any part of it or want to check into it before you vote.
Okay, thank you for all your calls and texts. Up next, we're going to be talking with GBH News analyst Charlie Sennott, the latest out of
It's the middle of the GBH Fall Membership Drive, but we're taking the day off from the long pledge breaks. More news, less fundraising. We hope you'll pitch in to fund the news by giving now, online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Community Servings, for 34 years providing medically tailored meals to thousands of people across a growing geography in Massachusetts who are experiencing diet-related illness and nutrition insecurity. Learn more at servings.org. And Massachusetts Maritime Academy, the Commonwealth's leadership university. They offer a hands-on learning environment, helping to prepare their students to be global leaders in careers on land or at sea. Maritime.edu.
Trusted, local news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio. We talk with GBH News analyst, the GroundTruth Project's Charlie Sennott, about the latest news on war in the Middle East.
Donors, plus the bullying of meteorologists who dare mention climate change and its impact on hurricanes. Then our texting question of the day. Ahead, Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. Israel says 4 of its soldiers were killed and dozens of others wounded after the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah struck an army training base. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports it was one of the deadliest attacks on Israel in the past year.
Hezbollah in Lebanon said it had targeted the base in the central Israeli city of Binyamina in retaliation for Israeli strikes in Beirut last week that killed 22 people. Israeli Army radio reports the drone hit the roof of a dining hall full of soldiers. The military says more than 50 soldiers were wounded, 7 of them seriously. Israel is investigating why the drone was not intercepted by air defense systems. The army says Hezbollah has fired about 13,000 rockets, missiles, and drones since it began firing on Israel last year. Israel's offensive against Hezbollah in Lebanon continues. Lebanese health officials say at least 51 people were killed in Israeli strikes Sunday. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
On the campaign trail now, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are both in Pennsylvania today, vying for its 19 electoral votes. Harris in Erie, Trump in the Philadelphia suburbs. A man from Las Vegas faces state weapons charges after being arrested over the weekend near a rally held by former President Trump in Coachella, California. Police say Vem Miller had a number of weapons and passports in his car. Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco.
The license plate was what we in law enforcement would recognize as one that is homemade and indicative of a group of individuals that claim to be sovereign citizens, and assuming the deputy assumes that he was part of that identifying group.
Miller was released on bond. The investigation continues. 3 economists based in the United States have been awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics for tackling one of the oldest questions in their field. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the 3 explored why some countries are wealthy and others are impoverished.
The wealth of some nations and the poverty of others has been a preoccupation of economists since Adam Smith founded the discipline in the 1700s. This year's Nobel Prize goes to 2 economists from MIT, Darren Acemoglu and Simon Johnson, and James Robinson at the University of Chicago. The 3 were recognized for tracing the path of various European colonies, some of which formed democratic inclusive economies, and others that were more extractive and autocratic. The former tended to prosper, while the latter languished. Acemoglu says the findings are generally pro-democracy, but he cautions it's no panacea. Democracies have to deliver, he says, or they'll lose the confidence of their people. Scott Horsley, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The lack of affordable housing is often listed as one of the state's most pressing needs, and there's evidence that military veterans are being hit especially hard. Becky Faraday is manager with the HUD-VASH program, which is a collaboration between the federal housing and veteran departments. She says vets can face unique challenges when looking for both single and multi-unit housing.
There's oftentimes 3 families, but there's stairs to get into them, or they're not handicap accessible in other ways. Or, veterans who experience homelessness oftentimes have, legal issues in their past, or they may have, their credit may have suffered.
Faraday encourages the local veterans in need to contact the VA. She says VA Boston has provided housing for more than 360 veterans this fiscal year. A high school in Worcester has been named the 3rd best public high school in America, according to a report that was conducted by Niche, a website that provides reports on rankings on colleges and K-12 schools. Massachusetts Academy for Math and Sciences School in Worcester is a public magnet school that is funded by the state legislature, was named in Niche's 2025 national rankings, which were published last week. Report says that the best public high schools ranking is based on factors that include state test scores, college readiness, graduation rates, teacher quality, and high school ratings. In sports, the Bruins host Florida at the Garden. It's about an hour away from the start of that game. Monday Night Football, the Bills at the Jets. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Sattva, committed to making handcrafted mattresses that help lull people to sleep and keep them sleeping soundly. More information is at SAATVA.com/NPR.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yeager, and welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are doing a new thing today. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News from Studio 3 in Brighton. We're going to be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with Attorney General Andrea Campbell for another edition of Ask the AG. She'll take our questions and yours, and our second ballot question debate on question 4, whether to legalize psychedelic drugs.
We should also add that not only is the governor with us on Wednesday, but we're pretty excited that Sunita Williams is zooming in.
She's zooming in
from the
outer
International
space.
Space Station at
It's a first.
11:40. It's pretty exciting, I should say.
Yep.
Our tech segment today involves J.D. Vance's continued intentional election denialism. He refused in this recent New York Times interview. We're going to play it for you, actually. 5 times in a row to answer the question whether Trump lost the 2020 election or not. Text us your thoughts. Will the refusal to acknowledge the loss affect your vote or not? 877-301-8970. We're joined now by Charlie Sennott. He's GBH News analyst, founder and editor-in-chief at the GroundTruth Project. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Marjorie.
Hello
Hey,
there.
Charlie. Great to talk to you. So we have learned that the United States is sending about 100 troops to operate this advanced anti-missile system in Israel as the fears of a broader war accelerate. I know we've had troops there in some capacity before, but what are we to make of this latest round of 100?
Well, I think it's significant to say that it's there to address this idea that there's heightened tensions and that Iran is threatening a strike. Israel is threatening a strike on Iran, which would mean a counterstrike from Iran would be likely, more ballistic missiles. So this very sophisticated, very advanced anti-missile system known as terminal high altitude area defense. And these batteries are really the specialty of the United States. They're specifically able to take out the kind of high-speed, advanced ballistic missiles that Iran is capable of sending into Israel now. So it's definitely occurring amid a heightening of tensions and an expansion of the theater of conflict in the Middle East. But it also shouldn't be seen as the first time we've ever done this. We did training exercises in 2019 on this battery. And this goes all the way back to, if you remember, way back, the Gulf War, 1991. I was there in Israel when they had, do you remember the Scud missiles that were coming in from Iraq?
Yes.
And that was the first time the Patriot systems out of Raytheon in Andover, Massachusetts, were actually deployed to Israel then. And it's a building upon that very sophisticated technology that has now become something that is just taking on new depths, new complexities, and they need our troops, U.S. troops there inside Israel to man these systems, to operate them, and to work with the Israelis to be sure it's a coordinated effort. So a coordinated approach, we always do exercises with Israel. Last one was 2019 with this exact battery. So not to be overstated, but also not to fail to recognize this is another really significant development in a regional war.
Well, there are two things. One, here's a quiz for both of you. You mentioned Scuds. You remember the Scud
Stud, of course.
I do. NBC. I remember him well. I was up on a rooftop, but no one was calling me a stud.
Arthur Kent was his name. Okay, second thing is
Wait,
said...
what was his name?
Arthur Kent. I had to look it up. I did not remember.
What happened to Arthur?
I don't know what happened.
We don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. Oh, no, he's 70. He's still around.
I got trapped in a bombshell that year with Jackie Mason, an event I will never ever forget as long as I live. And he had a
Really?
stand up after we came out of the bomb shelter when it was all clear, and I listened to Jackie Mason actually riff on Saddam and gas, and he said, "You think Saddam's got gas? I've got gas." And it was one of the moments where you realize Israel, despite all of the pressure, the war, the intensity of that region, he, to me, in that moment, represented the resiliency of the place as well. It's another intensely difficult moment inside of Israel and inside the region for the Palestinians in Gaza, for the Lebanese people in Lebanon, for the Israeli people. It is another terrible chapter in the Middle East, but I'll tell you, I do think this deployment of the missiles is good. The United States is standing by its ally. This is something that is a defensive system and something that shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone listening.
You say it's good. It shouldn't come as a surprise. You shouldn't overstate it. Who will overstate it? I mean, politics is part of everything. As November 5th is just 3 weeks and a day away. But Donald Trump, I'm assuming, is going to say yet further involvement of the United States in foreign wars and try to have it both ways, because obviously he's a big supporter of Netanyahu and vice versa. But even if it's the right thing to do on the merits, it doesn't, I mean, obviously Donald Trump doesn't care about that. He cares about what benefits him. And, you know, speaking of Netanyahu, by the way, I didn't realize it had been, I think it was 49 days since Netanyahu and Biden spoke. And obviously there are a lot of disagreements, but when you consider that the United States is its greatest supporter in its attempt to defend itself, some think it goes beyond self-defense. 49 days. Do we have any idea what came out of that conversation between the two of them?
I don't really know what's gone on inside that. I know that personal relationships between the two leaders are about as bad as it gets. Yeah. And, you know, for good reason. I think Netanyahu has been very disrespectful to the United States. I don't think he's been very diplomatic. I think that he has treated this sacred alliance with contempt. And I think people see it. And I think we all know that we can count on Donald Trump to spew lies about just about everything and get away with it. What's really worrisome to me is how we as listeners, we as consumers of news, allow this to happen. Like I'm more worried about us and how we receive information than the predictable forces of those who keep on misstating things. So if Trump misstates this defensive posture of the United States and Israel as another example of forever wars, I would hope that rational human beings would listen to that, would question that, and would say, is President Trump saying that he doesn't really honor the long-standing alliance in the region between the United States and Israel? It's important. It's got a lot of history behind it. And Israel is imperiled, and Israel does have a right to defend itself. And for the United States to be there to help it defend itself seems to me wise, rational. And I would be stunned if even Donald Trump would come out and try to trash that just because it's a decision of the Biden-Harris administration.
You're right. Why would the greatest protector of women in American history ever come out and criticize the Biden administration for their posture towards Israel? It's an excellent point. We're talking to Charlie Sennott from the ground. You're welcome, Charlie, from the GroundTruth Project.
So, Charlie, we read another very, very disturbing story about the Israeli army using captured Palestinians as human shields. It focuses on a 17-year-old Palestinian who had to go into places where they thought there were going to be explosives and do the reconnaissance work.
Yeah, this is a really distressing story, a really well-reported story, I would add. The New York Times did a very impressive job getting to this story, sort of getting into and underneath some of the rubble of Gaza to tell the story of what's happening to the Palestinian community in areas where Israeli troops are present. I hate to say this because it sounds callous. I hope it doesn't come across that way, but I'm not surprised to hear that the Israeli troops would be using people to go out and find information for them. War is a terrible thing. I know this is not the first time the Israelis have done this. I believe in the piece they even say that this is a tactic and a strategy they've used before. It's known by the command. It makes it no less, I don't know, just depraved. It's despicable. To take young people and use them as your shields to go out and see where the bombs are is unconscionable. But war is unconscionable. And
Well,
I
let
come
me-
down to this idea that, like, it is an extremely well-reported story about a horrific example of just how terrible warfare is.
But I can't help and maybe I'm being naive or just uninformed, but I think if this were on the front page of the newspaper about American troops, there would be a big brouhaha. So, war is war for American troops too, but I like to think that
Well, I would say in Iraq, the United States did often have different tactics and strategies for getting information from Iraqis, including torture. We all remember Abu Ghraib.
But were they civilians, the people that were tortured there? I thought they were military people.
Well, they're military, but the lines blur in these neighborhoods and in these areas, and it is hard to know who's who. And I would say certainly the United States has much to answer for in terms of its treatment of civilians in our wars after the 9/11 attacks.
But there was a huge brouhaha, Charlie, right? I mean, Abu Ghraib there was a huge revulsion about Abu Ghraib, and we all saw the terrible evidence of this on television and what was going on, and people got in trouble. I guess what I'm saying is, I like to think that there would be more of a brouhaha about this, but again,
I would like to too. I think you're right, Marjorie. I want to say I agree with you that this needs attention. This kind of tactic needs attention. But what I think its greatest power is that it undercuts Israel's constant condemnation of Hamas for using its own citizens as human shields. Here is Israel using Palestinians as human shields. And it just flips the narrative around, and it weakens their position, and it shows them not to have the kind of code of military conflict that Israel, I think, gained a reputation for holding higher standards. They've fallen by the wayside very frequently in this conflict, in which civilians have been targeted again and again. What is it now? Over 42,000, according to the Gazan Health Ministry, have been killed. Most of those, the vast majority civilians, and the majority women and children. So this is part of a continuum of Israel failing to live up to its reputation for having higher standards. And it puts the United States in a difficult position as having this intense alliance and support for Israel, including with this very advanced anti-missile defense system that's being deployed now with U.S. troops going in to help Israel defend itself. It all intensifies around the regional war. It intensifies the questions. And I think you're right. There should be focus on this. We should be talking about this as in a human rights context. And yeah, I hope we do. I worry in the heat of war, sometimes these stories get a little bit drowned out by the next big development. And I fear we're on the cusp of more big developments as Israel prepares apparently to strike within Iran, and then Iran would presumably have a retaliatory strike. So this is everyone walking on eggshells and through landmines, quite literally in this battlefield right now. Where it's going to head next, I fear, could be an even greater and more violent chapter. That's where I think this is headed.
Well, it's already headed. I mean, how many more journalists were killed in Gaza? Another 4 or 5. There are reports that no food has been delivered to northern Gaza since October 1st. That's almost 2 weeks, I guess, come tomorrow. I mean, these are pretty...
These are grave circumstances for sure. And, that thank you for mentioning this, more journalists killed. The most recent attack that killed 4 or maybe 5 journalists brings the total over 175 journalists who've been killed. Almost all of them, vast majority, more than 90%, are Palestinian journalists who've been killed during this fighting. And as the reporting by Al Jazeera and others is claiming, this is targeted killing. This is they're actually trying to go after journalists. I don't know that that's been confirmed enough to say it's established as clear fact, but certainly the numbers are extraordinary of journalists killed in this conflict. And for any of us who care about the idea that, the first casualty of war is the truth, those journalists on the ground are eyes and ears bringing the reporting. We need them there. Many have been from AP, Reuters, as well as other Middle Eastern news organizations. And they matter. Their eyes matter. Some of them are colleagues who I've known. And it is one of the great tragedies of this war that journalists have suffered so greatly. More journalists have died in this conflict, Israel-Palestine conflict, than in any conflict since the Committee to Protect Journalists began keeping data in the early 90s.
Wow. You know what I wonder, Charlie? Is there any impact at all in Israel or in the context of this war to the crackdown on college protests? That we had a lot of them last year, not so much at all this year. We had Palestinian protest on Stora Drive, but the colleges have really cracked down. Does that matter anywhere?
Well, I have 4 sons who are college age. 2 are out, 2 are still in, but they're all very close to their campuses still, and very different campuses. And I guess I feel close to that one in the sense that I think the college administrations have tried their best to curtail some of the demonstrations, but in so doing, they have really undercut freedom of expression on college campuses in ways that I think should surprise us all, and that we should be concerned about as people who, especially in Massachusetts, we are the center of higher education in our country. And look, I've done some teach-ins at some of these universities. Some of the stunning lack of information, lack of history, and really just wrong thinking about this conflict is astounding. And I do think there's room to be concerned. But I think when we tell people that they cannot protest, or when we shut them down from voicing their opinions, when we do that, we risk freedom of expression on campuses. And I think students have had a right to be upset about that. The crackdown has been severe. So many are intimidated, and I think it has quieted as a result of that.
We're talking to Charlie Sennott. Charlie, you mentioned Hamas a minute ago. Obviously, that's part of all of our discussions here. There are documents that the Washington Post was reporting. This is the headline a couple of days ago. Captured documents reveal Hamas's broader ambition to wreak havoc on Israel. And 2 things. In addition to trying to topple the second tallest building in Israel, I think it's in Tel Aviv, a la 9/11, the interesting part of this is the reporting suggests that there was an active effort by Hamas to get Iran involved, and Iran didn't. And I guess I see, unless you disabuse me of it, that is a positive sign. I'm not suggesting Iran is a friendly player as Israel's deciding what to target in retaliation for that relatively ineffective strike that Iran directed after the killing of the head of Hezbollah. But do you take anything away from the fact that Iran apparently said, Hamas, you're on your, well, I mean, obviously they're supporters, we're not going to get actively engaged in that, or am I reading too much into it?
I think you're reading into the moment the documents are written, and these documents have been obtained by both the New York Times and the Washington Post. Careful paragraphs in both news organizations about trying to validate these documents and actually look at them as verifiable. The Washington Post is more cautious on that front. The New York Times is certain they've verified the documents. Either way, I would question any documents that come out right in the height of a war that speak so directly to a point of view that I think Israel would want to put out there, which is that this was a more ambitious effort than was first realized, that the intensity, the conviction, and the purpose behind it would lend strength to their argument that it is now time for a final and sort of decisive strike against mortal enemies, both Hamas and Hezbollah. It's all, I don't know, just pretty convenient, Jim, but I do think hidden inside of that finding, carefully reported as it is a truth, which is that Iran does not, there's nowhere does it say that Iran says, yeah, we're on board. Let us ramp up the funding for you beyond what we already give you to help you succeed in this, and we'll be standing right by to help. None of that is in these documents, but the aftermath of what happened with Iranian strikes in Israel would suggest there is definitely close coordination between both Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. You have to think of Hamas and Hezbollah as proxies for Iran. I don't know. I guess I don't read as much into it as you're suggesting, that Iran, according to these documents, was not willing to fully engage with the ambitions of this plan, which when you read it are bone-chilling, what they sought to do, what they had hoped to accomplish. It was just horrific and stunning enough in what they did accomplish on October 7th, but the ambitions were just, I think, of another caliber. So I guess in sum, more work to do on making sure these documents are absolutely 100% verified. I'd say there's more work to do on that. Iran opting out, interesting, but who knows where they really ended up. Judging by the actions, Iran is now involved, and this thing is accelerating toward a much more intense regional conflict. And it's kind of just stunning to watch this. I've been covering the Middle East a long time. It's never been this intense. It's never been this bad or this much of a feeling of a sort of out of control set of different ways in which the gears are turning. I'm distressed about where we're headed in the near term.
Charlie, where are the hostages in all this? We've talked to you, certainly you have, with some hostage families, and among some there's a certain sentiment that the focus is no longer on them with everything else that's happening.
Well, we've done that too with someone
it's
who...
one of the things I really admire about your program is you don't let your audience forget. Thanks for bringing it up, Marjorie. We can't forget. There are so many civilian casualties, both Palestinians and Lebanese. That's real. That's profound. Those numbers are huge. It's unacceptable. It's immoral, I would argue. But we also can't forget where this spate of attacks, where this spike of violence began, not where all of the history of the Middle East begins. It didn't begin on October 7th, but the recent spike did. And that was not to be forgotten as one of the most horrific terrorist attacks in the history of the Middle East, and one of the most bold in its intentions, and that 250 hostages were taken. I believe the number is still 101. I should know that number precisely. But
that is the number they're using. But it's unclear. It's the not 101 who are believed to be alive, from what I understand.
Right, 101 still accounted for. Unaccounted for, rather. 101 hostages, Israeli hostages, still unaccounted for, and being held somewhere inside Gaza. And to think about what those families have gone through, particularly as we come to the end of the High Holy Days and a time of families and reflection inside of Israel, this really powerful and emotional time of contemplation, renewal of faith. You cannot help but think of those families gathered around their tables, thinking about those hostages and all of their communities who lost so many loved ones. Many of the kibbutzim that were hit, they lost, like a large percentage of their populations were taken or killed. So yeah, thanks for bringing it up. There's sadly, there is so much suffering on both sides. We need to keep both in our hearts and in our minds. And it is capable. We are all capable of doing that, I think, if you care. It's not this idea that there's a binary choice, whether you're pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. You can be pro both, and you can be pro human rights, and you can be pro trying to find a solution to this thing. But that solution will begin with hostages coming home. I mean, there needs to be a ceasefire, but the hostages need to come home too.
Charlie Sennott, thank you for your time. As always, good to talk to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Charlie. We've been speaking with Charlie Sennott. He is the founder and editor of the GroundTruth Project. Thanks again, Charlie. Up next, our medical ethicist Art Caplan joins to discuss a proposed law that would compensate people who donate their kidneys to strangers for up to $50,000. Plus, Kamala Harris's decision to release her medical records ahead of the election, and meteorologists getting bullied for daring to mention human-caused climate change in regards to the latest increase in extreme weather.
The GBH membership drive is underway, but we're taking a break from the regular fundraising today. It's what we call Quiet Monday, and we're bringing you all the news and information without the long pledge breaks. If you like this idea, then please make your gift, and today only, you'll also receive the morning edition All Things Considered tote bag as our thank you with an amount that fits your budget. You can see the tote and make that gift at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Newbury Court, a full-service retirement community in Concord, Massachusetts. Newbury Court is committed to creating active, independent lifestyles for persons 62 and over. More at newburycourt.org. And The Huntington, presenting Nassim, a theatrical demonstration of how language can both divide and unite us. Each night, a different VIP performs, from Tony Shalhoub to Mike Gorman and more. Tickets at huntingtontheater.org.
On question 4, that's whether to legalize psychedelics at 11 o'clock. Wednesday, the governor joins us for an hour, and Sunita Williams, I still am incredulous about this, zooms in from the International Kaplan.
Hello.
Hello.
So Art Caplan, Kamala Harris has released her medical information. Sounds like, I guess she's nearsighted, needs to wear contact lenses or something. But overall, she's in pretty good shape. We're not getting any medical information from Donald Trump. I know this is one of your favorite topics, so
and mine too.
Weigh in.
By the way, there was a Twitter from Trump within the past 24 hours that basically said maybe we shouldn't trust that report that Kamala issued. I'm not so sure that when she did her 60 Minutes interview, they didn't cover up some cognitive deficit, incoherent babble. Look, again, a country that has a candidate that's approaching 80, that drove out a candidate viewed as too frail because he was 80, a candidate that will be 82 at the time he finishes this term. Do we need a health report from Kamala Harris? Probably not, just by age. She doesn't seem to have any. Do we need a report on Trump? Absolutely. He is clearly starting to slide in his speeches and presentations. He's wandering around. The media is doing a little sane washing. I would basically look for verbatim reports on what he says because they're just incoherent most of the time. And, we keep getting hints that maybe he's incontinent, that maybe he's got obesity, that the rumors fly. We should demand a report. And
well, by the way, we sort of have
an assessment, and not from his hand-picked doctor, somebody independent.
Well, we sort of have a report. Here he is recently, during a rally in Wisconsin. Here's the report.
I could be in a beautiful beach. I could be in a gorgeous beach somewhere in the world. The sun beaming down on this beautiful body in a bathing suit.
Okay, enough of that. Now, let me just say one thing. I know this.
I have to say, permit me one insult.
Please.
Give out an alert to the whale patrol.
That is horrible. Now, let me just say this. I know we all agree on this, so we'll just move past it. I got to get it out of my system. The fact that nobody on his side cares that, as you say, a 78-year-old guy who clearly is slipping, who'd be the oldest president ever at the end of his term, doesn't release a medical report. Well, why doesn't he release it? I would say that gives you your answer. They don't care that he doesn't release his tax returns. They don't give a damn about anything. And that's why he doesn't do it, because there's no blowback. We're talking to Art Caplan.
And it should suggest, and voters should think about this, do you want Vance as president?
Yeah, that's right. He'll be the number two
Trump
guy.
may not be there, or may well leave us during a second term.
Yeah, we're going to talk about him not answering the questions about the stealing the election or not stealing the election later on our text messages thing. But I wanted to move on to something that I find so incredible. I remember back in June, there was a story out of Iowa about this meteorologist that resigned his job because he was sick of getting harassed and death threats over his reporting on climate change out in Iowa. So he left after 18 years in broadcasting. Now we have this story from Forbes about the bullying of meteorologists during these hurricanes down in Florida. Well, not just Florida, obviously, with Helene and Milton more recently, because they're talking about human-caused climate change.
Marjorie, I have never been so despondent about the state of American discourse when it comes to matters of science and medicine. We have candidates running on flat-out phony eugenics, platforms, basically talking about the poisoning of the blood and what the races are doing that are in here to deteriorate the nation, ignoring the fact that the whole country, except for, native peoples, are immigrants, but off they go, and it's debunked rotten science. I think the most respected scientists that Americans come in contact with are meteorologists. They see them every day on the news. They, use science to predict the weather. Now you've got them under attack because of hurricanes from know-nothing blithering idiots, and it's getting to the point where the meteorology community is issuing statements about, you won't stop hurricanes if you kill us.
Yeah.
I mean, literally a statement
Yeah.
that got issued. I mean, where are we?
And you know what? Have you noticed? I don't know if you happen to be around any people over the weekend that may be Fox News listeners. Cloud seeding has become a big thing. Apparently, the Democrats are all cloud seeding. I don't even understand what it means.
That's a Marjorie Taylor Greene thing.
Yeah.
It's saying that nobody denies that the
Well, it
weather is controlled.
proven- Yeah, well, I don't know. It is proven that the Jewish space lasers, if
Exactly.
properly used, can modify the weather. I mean, people who won't believe scientists on climate change, but will believe that somewhere somebody can control the weather. Boy, do we have some repair work to do. And I'm going to say something else. Science, the community of scientists, and some of whom are within earshot of this broadcast, are not speaking up loudly enough about this misuse of science, the threats to scientists. They ought to be demanding action to get institutions to protect them. And this whole, I'm really wound up about this whole eugenics business. It's flat out Nazi rhetoric. Where is the biology community? Where's the anthropologists? Let's hear some condemnation of this.
Well, we had Anthony Fauci in here about a year ago, and we talked to him at some length about the anti-science. I hate to call it a movement, but it essentially is a movement. I think it's fair and to say that of the million Americans who died, a significant number of that million died because of this anti-science sickness, this anti-fact sickness in this country.
Yep.
And speaking of movements, by the way, we have talked ad nauseum about the retreat of many companies and many universities from DEI. They all jumped on the train the second that George Floyd was murdered. And as soon as a couple of donors got exorcised, they were in retreat, which to me at least suggests that they're really never committed to begin with. We also talked to Michael Curry, who's head of the League of Community Health Centers in Massachusetts, Art, who started something called the Health Equity Compact, which is led by several dozens of health leaders of color trying to deal with the racial inequities in the healthcare system. And I was actually pretty optimistic about it until I read this piece in the Washington Post. DEI backlash threatens institutes studying racism and health. The point there being, as the attacks and retreat from DEI go on, so too does the pressure to stop talking about racial disparities in health.
Yeah, they said 85 anti-DEI bills have been introduced by state lawmakers. 85 since 2023.
What do you make of this, Art?
Bad leadership on the part of university leaders and medical school leaders. They know that there are deep problems still in healthcare, particularly for access, just getting services for various minority communities. They know that many newer communities have language and culture barriers that need to be overcome. DEI didn't go away. Partly it got, it was wounded by the emergence of the conflict in the Middle East. Anti-Semitism issues became a big issue on campus. The rights of Palestinian supporters, Gaza supporters, Hamas supporters to speak up became big. So in a way, it pushed DEI a little bit to the side because of those events, but it shouldn't. It's wrong. Diversity is still something that healthcare has to strive toward. It doesn't have a diverse enough workforce. None of those bills that got passed, by the way, do much to enhance that workforce diversity. And when you have people who still believe that, say, African Americans suffer pain differently, or when you see people worried that women are not in the same spectrum with regard to pain responses as men, and on it goes, there is work to be done, and the leaders got to lead, even in hard times.
Can I just say, I think you may have misspoken on one thing when you're talking about the anti-Semitism on campuses and the reaction to pro-Palestinian actions, that you mentioned pro-Hamas. There's I don't think that's what you meant. There's very little, at least in my...
No, I mean just the right to speak about if you're pro.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. We're talking Art Caplan, a medical ethicist. Can we move to a topic that we talked to you a lot about? Can you explain, I always forget, what role have you played in the transplantation community through the years? You're some big deal on that thing. Are you not? You're a giant. I know.
Yes.
How are you giant-esque? What have you done?
So for many years, I have been trying to get improvements in the organ donation system. For many years, I've been trying to get more equity in the distribution of organs, helping to set up the rules that we use that still aren't far from perfect, but at least we've got some rules. We used to just have selfish behavior is the way we distributed organs. Looking to push cutting edge. Let's try animals, pigs, as sources. Trying to get people to think about even research on the newly dead to test out face transplants. So across the spectrum, a lot of years trying to move the system of transplantation along to make it easier to utilize. We still don't have enough organs. You both know that. We're still short. So we're always scrambling to think of ways to get more. And I think the other way I've tried to be helpful is to protect living donors. What rights do you have? Who's going to pay if it goes wrong? That sort of stuff.
So I'm sure you've seen this. You're actually part of it. Obviously, you've seen it. The Today Show did a thing about a statutory proposal to allow kidneys to be paid for. Essentially, you pay for somebody who decides to donate an organ to keep you alive. You raise ethical alarm bells big time. What are they?
So there's a segment of our society, when they're not running around pushing eugenics, that is just in love with markets and payment as the solution to anything. And we know how well that works in healthcare because we all can watch the Steward Health System and other private equity guys jump in. First thing you're going to get if you start payment is the rich will start to get organs and the prices will go flying up, and there'll be no equitable distribution of those who are thinking about helping somebody else. But the main problem is organized religion. Many religions, Catholics, evangelical, Protestants, sort of Orthodox Catholics, they oppose payment. They don't think you can sell your body. And some people will say, I don't care what they do. If they pull out of the system, you're going to have less organs. If they say, I can't be in a system where they're buying and selling your body, that's a bad impact. And one other problem, we could do this without trying to deal with a market and paying the poor to sell their body parts, which is what it would become. We could just default the system and say, you are an organ donor unless you carry a card or choose not to be.
So it's an opt-out rather than opt-in.
Yeah, it's done in Wales. It's had good results in other countries. It improved, donation. And this idea that it's some kind of heroic, wonderful, beyond belief thing to do it, I think we should change it to it's something we really expect, and it's a good thing to do for the community. And if you don't want to do it, okay.
Can I ask one?
I just want to mention a statistic because in this story where Art is quoted extensively from today.com, 100,000 people died between 2010 and 2021 waiting for a kidney, or they became too sick to get a transplant. So that's a huge number.
Art, by the way, so that people don't think that I'm as clueless as I appear, I understand if you have only one organ of a particular thing, you're probably not going to sell that. But since...
No, you're probably not.
Probably not, anyway.
This is like maybe you could sell your appendix. I don't know. Does anybody want
I don't know if they need one very much.
Gallbladder.
Okay, so obviously we're talking kidneys because most of us have two and you can exist on one. Are there any countries that allow... Western countries, China?
One, Iran.
Iran? Is that really true?
Go. Yeah, but it doesn't work there. It's only a few rich people who wind up having enough money in that market to get organs. It didn't solve the shortage. It just pushed all the organs into the bodies of the rich. By the way, one other problem, if you had a kidney market, but you're asking people altruistically to give hearts and lungs and livers, the people who transplant those don't want to market in kidneys because they're going to have to run it next to, if you will, a market. And it makes the whole thing unmanageable.
Before we leave this topic, we talked to you, 6 months ago. What's the word for transplantation from animals, non-human animals? Xenografts, okay. We talked to you about this, I thought, relatively a hopeful thing with pigs and described the process of doing this. Remind us, where are we in that process?
Look, whether you do what I want, which is to shift toward a presumed consent or default to donation model, or you try to institute a market, you're never going to get that 100,000 people handled. I just don't think any of that is going to work at those numbers, whatever the heck you're doing. Going to animals is a real avenue to pursue. We've done very little, but what we're going to try next is the first clinical trials. We're going to see 10, 12 experiments conducted somewhere using probably pig kidneys to see if it actually works. So we've done a few humans, looks promising. Now we're going to start the research side. If that goes, if it really worked and you could get the immunosuppression right and everything, I think you'll see kidneys made available from animals within 2 years, pretty fast.
Incredible. We're talking to Art Caplan.
So 23andMe became famous because you could send away and get information, get data about your DNA. But
did you do it?
No.
Neither did I. I don't know. I always wanted to, and apparently it's about to be too late.
Oh, I don't know.
Did you ever do it, Art?
Never.
Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah, I
think it's a bait and switch scheme, but I'll tell you in a minute. Go ahead, Morgan.
Well, anyway, it's a one and done kind of thing. Once you got the info, that's it. And I guess now it's 23andMe is having some financial difficulties. But the question in this NPR piece is what happens to all the DNA data that this company has accumulated?
And DNA, they also
and DNA, that's right.
Do.
Yeah.
So why am I so? No, I wouldn't do it. I saw a lot of people getting the kits around holiday season. It
yes,
was sort of a fun
presents. Yep.
Yes, and my family was swamped with it, and I said, "Don't do it, don't do it." Why? First of all, genes do not sort out by national boundaries. You're not going to find out if you're Panamanian by a gene test. There's no Panamanian genes. You could put on lederhosen.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you want.
Lederhosen.
Like those ads. Guys dancing around.
You were Albanian, but again, there are no Albanian.
That's a great
genes.
point. Why do we fall for that?
It's advertising.
Well, some genes do have Lederhosen images on them from what I haven't seen them myself, but I've read about them.
In the Irish, we have little leprechaun hats.
You do, exactly. Marjorie
and
said
they eat
that.
Wiener Schnitzel, and it's a proclivity.
Okay.
And look, you don't, it's this core nasty racism that runs in American society. People think your cultural identity is driven by your genetic makeup. It isn't. It's never been. There's more in common between groups than different. And probably the 2% genetic difference that you see if you look for something in a 23andMe type test is not sufficient to say where your ancestors are from or what ethnic group you're in or any of that. So I always thought what they wanted was your DNA and your data. They used it as a thing to say, hey, find out if you're really, Ethiopian and send us your DNA and we'll send you back some kind of cuckoo report that says, well, you're not Ethiopian, but you do come from Africa, which you probably knew pretty well anyway. But then they had your DNA and they could extract the data out of it and sell it to companies. And the answer to Marjorie's question is, I don't know what privacy protections they promised at 23andMe because I didn't get far enough to care. But if you sell that DNA and the data to somebody else, they're not bound by any privacy protection that 23andMe promised or agreed to. Free fire zone. I wouldn't trust my DNA in big data sets in private companies because they get bought. And once they get bought, new rules.
But the contention of the woman who was the founder, who unfortunately for her is still the CEO but has no support, I think her whole board resigned a couple of days ago, is that this is all anonymous or anonymized, if that's a word, data. Is that BS or is that legit?
I think it's BS because I think when you sent it in, they could link it. Now, they didn't use it identified, but if they sent you back results and said, Jim, it turns out that you are Croatian, I think they got your name.
An address.
An address.
And probably credit card number.
Hey, Art, before you go, could we end where we began? And could you just remind me of something that I've been thinking about the whole interview? We have talked to you ad nauseum about the notion of all the major candidates. This is prompted, obviously, by Harris releasing her medical records this weekend, about all candidates being required to do it. Remind us one last time, was there a reporter at the New York Times who used to get the medical records of each of the major candidates, and he published something? How was it done?
You're right.
Was that what it was?
Named Larry Altman.
Yeah.
He was a physician and he worked for the New York Times, and he sort of had great contacts, and he used to approach the individual White House type physicians or the candidates' physicians. And he did. He published more accurate stuff about candidate health than anybody I can remember. That practice was built on his trustworthiness and eyes. But there was also a bill, Jamie Raskin put one in a couple of years ago for independent panel assessment of candidates. It didn't go anywhere. I don't know. When you have a 78-year-old guy who looks like he's slipping and his bronzer keeps getting, more and more heavy to cover up who knows what, it's time that we at least get an accurate, independent report.
Hear, hear.
I know his supporters don't care, but they should.
Art, good to see you. See you soon.
You,
Be
Art.
well. Thank you so much.
We've been speaking with medical ethicist Art Caplan. The doctor is William F. Virginia Connolly Mitty, professor and founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU School of Medicine in New York City. Up next, our text deal. J.D. Vance's election denialism is deepening, as recorded by the New York Times. When given 5 opportunities to say whether his running mate, Donald Trump, lost the 2020 election, Vance gave 5 rote denials. We have been soliciting your texts about the continuation of the big lie from 2020 and the Trump-Vance ticket, setting the stage for another big lie in 2024. We'll tell you what the texters had to say up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Billy Bragg and his Roaring 40 tour is coming to Medford. He joins us ahead of his show at the Chevalier Theatre to talk about being an activist and keeping social movements alive in an ever-turbulent world. Plus artist Jeffrey Gibson on his huge, vivid, and exuberant mural on the Greenway that's bursting with imagery, hearkening to his indigenous ancestry and love of our land. Tune in for that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Burton's Grill and Bar, serving weekend brunch with dishes like cast iron French toast, chicken and waffles, and short rib hash. A gluten-free menu is available. With 8 locations in Greater Boston. burtonsgrill.com. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan, streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News from Brighton, which is the first. We'll do it every day. Attorney General joins us tomorrow. The governor joins us on Wednesday. Sunita Williams zooms in from the International Space Station on Wednesday. But for now, the big lie, the insistence by some Republicans the 2020 election was not free and fair, persists with just 3 weeks to go till November 5th. Publicly, before J.D. Vance decided to support Donald Trump, as you know, he called the Trump reprehensible, an idiot, privately compared him to Hitler. The now retired general of the U.S. Army, former Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, in Bob Woodward's new book, War, says Trump is the most dangerous person in this country and a fascist to the core. Trump did lose in 2020. Every challenge, with the exception of one with a handful of votes, he lost. But his running mate in 2024, Vance, refuses to say so. Here is a fabulous 90 seconds with New York Times reporter Vance and Lulu Garcia Navarro.
In the debate, you were asked to clarify if you believe Trump lost the 2020 election. Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that Donald Trump and I have both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future. I think there's an obsession here with focusing on 2020. I'm much more worried about what happened after 2020, which is a wide open border, groceries that are unaffordable. And look,
Senator, yes or no?
Okay.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator
I think that's
Vance,
the question.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
And I've answered your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
I have asked this question repeatedly. It is something that is very important for the American people.
Okay, 5
to
times.
know.
That was 4. She goes to 5 times. Good for that reporter, I should say. He never answers the question. So what did the texters have to say?
Well, here's an anonymous texter. I would like a reporter to finally ask, why do you think lying is an acceptable behavior for anybody seeking higher office? That's a good one. And then Teresa in Ashby says, on Vance, the question we should keep asking out loud is why won't he accept reality? We should be asking them all why they can't live in reality. It proposes that there's some mental dysfunction. We need to start calling them out on this. The Trumpies, or Trump zombies, as this Teresa calls them, all programmed by their media choices. It could become dangerous quickly. It requires our attention and focus. And there's no one that's really happy with this.
Do you know what percentage of Republican, self-described Republicans think that Biden did not win the election?
70%.
70%.
I know. Well, this is the thing
in this country.
we debate, you and I, sometimes when you talk about, list all the atrocities that Trump has been involved in. and I think the people that are his most virulent supporters don't believe it. I don't believe it. Stephen Newburyport says Vance has been asked repeatedly about his views on the 2020 election. We know the answers. Reporters should just move on to ask different questions. I think it's good to say
so do I.
The report, with all due respect, he didn't answer the question. But anyway, we are moving on. Up next, we're going to talk to Bruce Tingle. He's the CEO of John Hancock. He joins us ahead to talk about their longevity symposium this week. It's basically about how to start at 30 or 40, I guess even 20, if you want to live your...
It's the middle of the GBH Fall Membership Drive, but we're taking the day off from the long pledge breaks. More news, less fundraising. We hope you'll pitch in to fund the news by giving now, online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the MBTA Commuter Rail, providing public transportation service to over 170 cities and towns in Massachusetts. Just take the train. You can plan your trip at mbta.com/massbytrain. And Barrett Tree Service East. Their team of arborists and plant healthcare professionals provides sustainable management for the care of trees, plants, and lawns in the communities where they live and serve. Learn more at barretttreeeast.com.
I'm Nightside News anchor Mary Blake, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Braude, ahead on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio. We're joined by the CEO of John Hancock. Just after the 1 o'clock news, Brooks Tingle.
Meanwhile, a separate column in the Washington Post argues we might be too comfortable bringing Fido and Lassie with us everywhere we go, scaring off wildlife and the dog-averse among us. How involved should our dogs be in our everyday lives? And when is it better to leave man's best friend at home? Your calls and texts next. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. Lingering gasoline shortages and power outages continue to frustrate hurricane recovery efforts in Florida. As NPR's Frank Morris reports, some 375,000 customers are still in the dark.
Hurricane Milton temporarily shut down the port of Tampa, where almost all the gasoline for the area normally arrives, and residents had already tapped gas stations dry by that point. The state has been dispensing free gasoline at several sites. Meanwhile, Joseph Lee with the nonprofit Fuel Relief Fund says his organization is focused on making sure police, fire, and medical professionals have gas.
Unfortunately, it's unavailable in a giant area. So we currently have one tank over at St. Joseph's Hospital committed to that for the nurses and doctors, and we're going around from site to site to try and take care of the first responders to keep them going.
The Port of Tampa is reportedly operating normally now, which should help stations fill their tanks and alleviate the gas crunch. For NPR News, I'm Frank Morris in St. Petersburg.
Many eyes on Israel to see if it'll respond to an attack by Hezbollah that killed 4 Israeli soldiers. The Iran-backed militant group launched drones on an Israeli army training base, as NPR's Jackie Northam reports from Tel Aviv.
It was against an army base in a place called Binyamina in central Israel, about 40 miles from the Lebanon border. And it's one of the deadliest Hezbollah attacks in this past year. Israel's military said the drone hit the roof of a dining hall full of soldiers, and that, in fact, there were 2 drones launched. One was shot down, but this one hit the base.
Hezbollah issued a statement saying the attack was retaliation for Israel's strike on Beirut Thursday, killing 22 people. The U.S. is sending an air defense system and military personnel to Israel. Russia is denouncing NATO's annual nuclear exercises in Europe's North Sea, saying they fuel nuclear tensions at a dangerous time in Europe. NATO's Steadfast Noon exercises began today, as NPR's Charles Maines reports.
The annual NATO exercises feature 2 weeks of drills involving some 60 aircraft, many of them nuclear-capable, operating in the north of Europe, some 500 miles from the Russian border. NATO officials say this year's maneuvers have added significance given repeated Russian nuclear saber-rattling over the West's military support for Ukraine. That includes Russian President Vladimir Putin's recent decision to lower the threshold for Russia's use of nuclear weapons. Yet speaking to reporters Monday, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov blamed the NATO drills and the alliance's expansion towards Russia's borders for fueling nuclear tensions, suggesting that was obvious given the ongoing hot war in Ukraine. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are in the key swing state of Pennsylvania today, vying for its 19 electoral votes. Harris in Erie, Trump in the Philadelphia suburbs. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. 2 economists from MIT are among the recipients of this year's Nobel Prize for Economics. Diran Acemoglu and Simon Johnson of MIT won the prestigious award, along with James Robinson of the University of Chicago, for their research into why societies with poor rule of law and corrupt institutions don't have sustainable growth. Speaking at a press call this morning, Johnson talked about the current stresses on the American democracy and how technology can be used to help solve problems like climate change.
The choices that need to be made about technology and about political outcomes rest with us. It's a responsibility that we need to take seriously. And if our research has pushed people in that direction, and if today's incredible, amazing prize award helps raise awareness, then I think all the work we've done over the past 2.5 decades has been worth it.
Their research found that because economic growth depends on technological innovation, advances are only sustained when countries promote individual rights that give more people the incentive to invent things. Maybe we can invent a clock that we don't have to turn back. Don't look now, but there are less than 3 weeks from returning to darkness and despair, and we're not talking about the election. In 19 days, on November 3rd at 2 a.m., we turn the clocks back an hour, ending daylight saving time for the year. Boo. And then 2 days later, November 5th at 8 p.m., the polls will close and local and national elections and the counting will begin. So it's 19 days for the clocks, it's 21 days for the election. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Organic Valley, a farmer-owned dairy cooperative of small organic family farms dedicated to protecting where food comes from. Learn more about Organic Valley at ov.coop. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are streaming for the first time today at youtube.com/GBH News because we are in Brighton, not at the Boston Public Library, but we will be tomorrow for the Attorney General Andrea Campbell taking our questions and yours, and a debate on ballot question number 4, which would legalize psychedelics. Plus, later this week, we're going to be talking with the astronaut, Sunita Williams. She's going to zoom in from outer space, the International Space Station. And I should mention the governor's going to be with us on Wednesday at the Boston Public Library, too. Yep.
Hi, Jim, is what you're supposed to say then.
Hello, Jim.
Hi, Marjorie. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Joined now by Brooks Tingle. He's the CEO of John Hancock. He's here to discuss longevity economy, whatever that means. He'll tell us in a second, ahead of the second annual John Hancock Longevity Symposium. That's later this week. Brooks, it's good to meet you. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well,
Pleasure.
Jim just said longevity economy, whatever that means. So what does that mean?
Well, it really has to do with our desire. Well, longevity economy means something a little broader. I'll come back. But, we have this tremendous desire to help people live longer, healthier, better lives. I think we all aspire to that, don't we?
Yes, we do.
And there's a lot of interesting science. I was listening to your last guest about, health and so forth. And our interest isn't so much, are you going to live to 150 or not? Like you hear these scientists now saying the first child that's going to live to 150 has been born. And ours is much more around just helping people take small steps every day that can correlate to a longer, healthier, better life. And emphasis really on healthier, because none of us really want to live longer if we feel lousy, right? So live longer, healthier. And the great thing is, in today's world, there's never been a time in human history where, while none of us can control sort of the exact date of our demise, we could have more influence than we can today about how long we live. Decisions we make every day around, are we physically active? What do we eat? By the way, I don't always make perfect decisions here. I got to caveat it. But nutrition, physical activity, smoking or not, how much you drink, all these things directly correlate to the major lifestyle diseases that account for more than half the deaths in the U.S. now.
But your approach to this is sort of a social determinant approach, is it not? It doesn't just, it seems to me from what I've read, be about what you eat and whether you exercise. It's also about housing kinds of things, availability of things and foods that can make you healthy. Am I wrong or no?
Remarkably so, and this is a stat you've probably heard, but let me share a stat that really puts an exclamation point on that, that's close to home here in Boston. Life expectancy in Back Bay, if you're born in Back Bay of Boston, your life expectancy is 23 years longer than if you're born in Roxbury. And as a crow flies, I don't know, is that 2 miles maybe?
Yeah.
So yes, I don't want to imply that it's just as simple as, oh, all of us go make good decisions every day. But the point is, whatever your baseline is, being more physically active, making better choices on food, things like that, seeing your doctor for preventative screenings will help, and that'll accumulate over time.
You know, Ayanna Pressley, when she ran for Congress for the first time, if you've heard it, would say you get on the subway in Roxbury near my house, and by the time you're not the end of the line, but you're in Harvard Square, same sort of grotesque health inequity. This whole notion of how you not only live long, but live well and live healthy, I'm hoping your target audience is not just people on the verge of old age, but starting at an early age to develop good habits, good financial habits, good health habits, good eating habits, etc. Yes?
Brilliant, yes. And when we say early age, I mean really early, right? We should be talking, we do work with the Tufts School of Nutrition down the street here, and their Food is Medicine Institute. We need to be talking to young people, really young people. Young parents of young people. I do some work with Tufts to engage people in DC about nutrition policy. Things like the SNAP program, for example.
Which has not been reauthorized, by the way,
right,
despite the bipartisan history.
Women and children that for women.
So you think about that, like it's a weird thing in our society where oftentimes the most healthy foods cost more than less healthy foods, the highly processed stuff. So, you know, I've been working with Tufts and others to try to influence policy that says, hey, if you have X number of dollars through the SNAP program, a young family or what have you, oftentimes they're trying to make that go as far as possible. So the basket may be composed of generally less healthy stuff because it's cheaper. Why wouldn't $1 spent on fruits and vegetables only count to, say, 50 cents towards that stipend or what have you? So there are a lot of policy implications here.
You know that some states are applying, I know you know this better than I, that Medicaid money be allowed to get waivers to allow Medicaid money to be able to be used for healthy foods.
Food is medicine. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, when you mentioned before, just in case people don't know this, you mentioned in the Back Bay 23 years longer than if you grew up in Roxbury, which is generally a poor community, more people of color. So obviously there's the economics there, money versus not much money. But what else? Why such a 23-year difference? Why so big?
A bit beyond my area of expertise, but some of the factors you've noted: access to care, access to quality nutrition from the outset.
Yep.
At youth and other factors like that. In some cases, in some communities, violence and things like that compromise life expectancy.
Or stress.
Stress is hugely important, yes. So there are a lot of factors. I guess I should mention, by the way, you may be wondering, why is an insurance company CEO in here talking about...
That's the next question. What's in it for you?
What I would ask you, and I won't ask you the personal question as to whether you each own life insurance, but if any of your listeners own life insurance, I want to assure them that no one cares about them living a long, healthy life other than maybe their immediate friends and family, than their life insurance company. and you know,
there's one honest man in the room.
I'm honest maybe to a fault, but let me tell you about how we make money, right?
Yeah.
So you buy a life insurance policy, you pay us premiums, we collect those premiums, we invest those premiums, and the longer we're able to do that, the more money we make. So I want to be clear that people living a longer, healthier, better life is in our corporate best interest, but we're so well aligned. Customers, people want to live longer, healthier, better too. And, you know, I'm sure you have CEOs. There are a lot of people, a lot of companies that say, we have our customers' best interest at heart. To be honest with you, I don't know. Sometimes I'm not sure about that with some companies, some industries. I can tell you our interests are totally aligned. We want our people to live a long, healthy life, and people want that too.
And how do you do this? I mean, we'll talk about your symposium later this week.
On Wednesday.
But on a daily, how do you effectuate these obviously attractive goals there?
Yeah, so it starts with, first of all, now is the time to do it, because as I said earlier, choices we make every day can't totally decide when we're going to live to or not, but can influence it, right? So we developed an app that we launched with our customers about 10 years ago now that provides incentives and rewards. So you get a certain number of steps a day, you get points. Like airline frequent flyer programs, right? The more miles you fly with an airline, you get a better status and you get more perks.
And that equals a reduction in your premium?
Right. So for us, everything you do that correlates with longevity, whether it's exercise, buying healthy foods, going to the doctor for a preventative screening, doing an online nutrition seminar, whatever it might be, you earn points for those. Those points accumulate, you get a status, and that status drives how much of a premium discount you enjoy. but also all the kinds of other rewards, discounted hotel stays, free Amazon Prime subscriptions, Apple Watches. And it's really
Is that how you got your Apple Watch?
It is. I actually participated, yeah. But it's amazing to see the power of incentives and rewards.
Can we talk about that for a second? We've discussed this in other contexts. I like paying people to do good things that they would otherwise not do. I know that offends some people. What's the evidence that works?
Well, thankfully, we have, I know data is a big topic, and this was a topic when we started, like, will people share their data with us? The good news as a life insurance company is to get our products in the first place, we know an awful lot about you, right? That we put people through this process we call underwriting. So thankfully, customers are willing to share how many steps I took yesterday and these types of things. So because we have all that data, we can see that when a customer joins our program, they become twice as physically active as a customer did before.
Wow.
The program that gives them these credits.
Yes, exactly. Right. And we can see that we offered, when COVID came along, we offered our customers points for getting the COVID vaccine.
Really?
And we could see that our customers were more likely because they're getting rewarded for it. And incentives and rewards really do work. It sounds like a statement of the obvious, but this Apple Watch I'm wearing, we have a program where you can claim an Apple Watch, and then you get a monthly physical activity goal. And if you hit that goal, you make no payment on the watch. If you don't do anything, if you don't do any physical activity,
you go to their house and take it back.
I promise I don't do that. No, but you pay 1/24 of the retail cost of the watch every month.
$15.
And it's amazing. Yeah, $15.50. And it's amazing to see what customers do. We had a customer panel recently, and I'll never forget, this woman came in. I think she was a pretty successful woman. She goes, I don't think twice about spending, $30 on a glass of wine at my favorite restaurant, but I'll be darned if I'm going to pay that $15.50. And she'll be out at 11:55 in the evening walking around. So incentives and rewards do work. Now, the key is...
How do you know they're telling the truth?
Oh, you're one of those people that thinks they're like slapping the wearable on their cat, or...
Possibly. You never know.
There's always one. Yeah, no, there's some great YouTube videos of people taking a Fitbit on a drill and like spinning it around. And I remember my son at a Patriots game back when there was a little more to clap about at Patriots games. And he figured out that if he clapped, he was getting credit for steps. So he clapped for like the whole third quarter of a game. But this is actually instructive because he clapped for a whole third quarter, and then he said, you know what, this is stupid, Dad, and stopped doing it. So we've studied the science, if you will, of cheating and all that type of thing, and generally they're not sustainable. People might do something that gets them a few extra steps one day, but our program, our average relationship with the customer is 20-some years. We paid a death claim recently where the client had been a client for 99 years. Parents bought the kid a policy on his first birthday, died shortly after. So you may decide to cheat a little bit.
Died at 99?
At 100, just after his 100th birthday.
Wow.
But by the way, the technology, too, has made it a lot easier. They can detect when people are putting it on their cat or whatever.
We're talking to Brooks Tingle, who's the CEO of John Hancock.
So if people are, and by the way, can anybody go to this seminar tomorrow? Do you have to get a ticket, or what's the deal?
This year, it is not open to the public. We started last year with a small group, about 250 people, mostly sort of industry insiders, if you will, from our industry. This year, we've about doubled it to 500 people, not yet open to the public.
Okay. So what are people that do get to go going to learn?
Really practical, everyday steps that correlate with a longer, healthier, better life. This isn't like heavy-duty stuff. It's relatable stuff that all of us can think about. Sleep, for example. Dr. Matthew Walker, one of the renowned sleep scientists. By the way, sleep, in our work where we just deal with facts about what correlates with longevity, sleep is a really underappreciated step. I think it's getting more attention now. But there used to be this argument about the chicken versus the egg, right? Do people that drink too much, not exercise enough, sleep poorly? Or do people that sleep poorly, not exercise enough, eat lousy? And sleep is really proving to be the chicken, if I'm staying with the metaphor properly. So that we'll have a sleep expert, stress, cancer, early detection, future cancer treatment,
Alzheimer's, nutrition. I read?
Alzheimer's, a lot of interesting things going on with Alzheimer's. We have a whole lot of long-term care customers. Long-term care insurance is where it pays if you end up in an assisted living facility. About a third of those folks that end up going on claim are due to some sort of cognitive decline. The big question we're asking ourselves now, as testing gets better for Alzheimer's, is there utility in finding out earlier than you might have that you have or are going to have Alzheimer's? We don't have that one resolved yet. But.
Yeah. By the way, are you alone? I assume you're not alone in the insurance industry. I don't mean to take away from John Hancock, since that's the operation you run. As you say, it's in the self-interest, selfless and selfish. Are most life insurance companies doing a variation on this theme?
Wouldn't you think that every single life insurance company would be taking steps to help their customers, even if it was just overt self-interest?
And they don't.
And they're not.
And why is that?
We're the only. It's complicated science. There's a little bit of a. I wouldn't call it a leap of faith, but you've got to connect some dots. That if we spend this money today to encourage you to go for an extra long walk or whatever, it's going to pay off down the road.
Well, obviously you're a private sector kind of guy, and I'm thinking about this rewards thing you talked about a minute ago. Should government be doing a variation on the same theme? I mean, government obviously insures lots of people, not for life, but for health, whether it's Medicaid or Medicare. Should they be doing a variation on a theme?
I believe so, and I'm a huge believer in public-private partnerships. I think there are a lot of really complicated issues that can be better solved, not by either side, public or private, but together. You look at what's going on with GLP-1s. You've probably had people in to talk about Ozempic and Wegovy. And all these things.
Yes.
And there's a great example where those drugs, if you don't qualify for them, they're very, very expensive. I've got a bunch of friends that are just writing a $1,000 check a month to get Ozempic, and they're losing 30, 40 pounds. Where there are a whole bunch of folks in our society that would benefit enormously from treating obesity and implications for type 2 diabetes and things like that. But the drugs are so darn expensive. So, imagine a public-private partnership where maybe the drug company said to Medicare, Medicaid, hey, we're gonna take less payment up front. I'm making this stuff up, by the way, but less payment up front, but we'll take 0.1% of Medicare savings over the next 20 or 30 years due to obesity claims or what have you. So I do think there are interesting things, and I think this concept of incentives and rewards that we can prove works can be brought to some government programs.
Do you have a lower premium, life insurance premium, John Hancock, if you're taking Ozempic or Wegovy or one of these?
We haven't brought that indirectly. One of the things that you get points for is maintaining a healthy BMI. So should that cause you to have a more healthy BMI, you would be rewarded. We don't currently do anything directly with those drugs.
We're talking to Brooks Tingle, who is the CEO of John Hancock.
May I ask you something that isn't really about longevity, but you're a big deal there. You run an insurance company. A lot of us have been talking this last couple of weeks with the hurricanes, Helene going out through North Carolina and the Hurricane Milton following it, about home insurance rates. I know that's not your what you hear about, but you do know something about insurance. This is something that is going to be a real problem, I think, as this extreme weather continues.
Well, the number one thing I know about home insurance is that a very wise predecessor of mine decided to get out of that business at John Hancock. So it was fortuitous because obviously it's been challenging. And I'm not an expert in that space, but I think it's evident, and certainly particularly certain parts of the country, that that's even more challenging every day.
Does climate affect life insurance rates in some parts of the country?
Not so much in the U.S. It can globally, particularly air pollution, things like that. There are indirect ways. It's interesting. Skin cancers are on the rise. We now give people points within our program for getting preventative skin checks for skin cancer. So indirectly in the U.S., more directly in some parts of the world where air quality is particularly poor, things like that.
We talked about this longevity economy a few minutes ago and used the example of 92-year-old life expectancy if you live in the Back Bay, 69 years if you're in Roxbury, and obviously diversity and healthcare inequities, which we did discuss with Art Caplan, are huge. Diversity in leadership matters a lot too. I would assume you agree. And I don't know if you read Shirley Young's piece in the Globe the other day about black CEOs leaving town.
I did, yes.
You did. Does that concern you? I mean, we spoke to her about it. She wrote the piece. 10 leading black CEOs left. Then we spoke to Michael Curry, who's not only head of the League of Community Health Centers, but he's also on the National NAACP Board of Directors. And he said, and I'll paraphrase him, that part of the reasons are different in every case, is the support network isn't always there for, and there's a shorter runway, was the expression he used, for people of color who end up in jobs like yours. Do you buy that notion, and how much does this exodus concern you, Brooks?
I tend to, having the opportunity to know the people involved, I honestly tend to look at it on a much more personal level than a macro level. So I don't tend to think about it as much. I have to say, I've only been sort of part of the CEO club for 18 months now.
I know that. Yeah.
I have to say I have found it to be inclusive and supportive. I know that I'm not from a diverse background, but there are many diverse participants in some of the boards that I'm on and things. And I don't personally sense sort of a hostile or unsupportive vibe around diverse leadership in the Boston community. I'm not trying to be naive. I'm not saying.
How important is that at John Hancock?
Well, I look at it really simply as a leader. We operate in different communities. Obviously, we have thousands of people here in the Boston community. Sure. And it's odd to me that some of these things have become so politicized, because to me, it's just kind of about simple math in some cases and simple strategies around talent. So if we operate in a community that has a demographic profile of a certain distribution of folks, if our employee base doesn't broadly sort of reflect that, then am I really attracting the best possible talent?
Well, this is a majority minority city. Does your employee?
It doesn't yet, and I think few companies does it. But so we put a lot of work into ensuring that we're getting the very, very best talent and investing in it at a very early age. We've been very proud for coming up on 20 years to sponsor a program called the MLK Scholars in Boston, where at the high school level, we're providing summer jobs for students of color in the city. Because oftentimes, you can't kind of show up as a CEO today and say, okay, the company's going to look this way tomorrow. These things are fairly, have long cycles around the education system and access. So that's why we start with high schoolers and summer jobs.
I have one more. You have something that I'm going to ask one more non-longevity.
I have a longevity thing before you get to
Let me do one more, and
okay.
then we can return before we leave.
Okay.
I moved here 30-some years ago, and when I moved here, a ton of the major corporations had their headquarters here. And I think the conventional wisdom to which I subscribe, I don't have hard data to use your term a minute ago, is the involvement of corporate leaders in the life of this community was far deeper when the headquarters were here than when the headquarters moved to North Carolina, or I know you obviously have Canada and that sort of thing. Do you see the same thing? And do you see the same thing?
I do. I think it's really important that Massachusetts, Boston, work hard to continue to be a vibrant home to companies of all sizes. In our case, our involvement, we've been here 162 years. The fact that we're owned by a Canadian parent has not changed at all our commitment to the Boston area. But if a company moves by and large or entirely, there is a different level of involvement. And, I'm very, very proud of the Massachusetts economy, the Boston story. We have a remarkable story. We talk about the longevity economy. I'm on a big pitch to say Boston should be known as the heart of this longevity economy.
Why?
You've got Silicon Valley that's for this, and and Research Triangle, and because look at the unique combination of life sciences, academia, pharma, financial. If people live longer, what do they need? They need more savings. We've got financial services, so we've got a really unique. Dr. Joe Coughlin over at MIT's Age Lab sort of pioneered this notion of Boston being the hub of the longevity economy, and all things related to people living longer, healthier, better lives. And I'm a passionate believer in that. And I think it's getting some root. I mean, the governor's kicking off our forum. The mayor did last year. And I think officials in the state and the city realize this can be a really compelling value proposition for our local area.
So to get back to the longevity thing on the way out again, this one of these stories from Investment News talks about how you're partnering with MIT on this, and you're going to produce this index for
longevity preparedness.
Yes,
index, yeah.
And it's going to include, as you mentioned before, financial planning, retirement transition, not just health stuff. Well, I guess that is because if you're nervous about money, I guess that's stressful. End of life planning, technological advances. So regular people can't go to this thing tomorrow, or it's a closed thing. When is this longevity preparedness index going to be around, if it's not already?
Well, it's going to be produced for the first time early next year. We'll publish it. What's really unique about it, though, is you could just Google it. There are 100 different longevity preparedness type things. What's different about this is it's not just how much money have you saved, do you have health care, it's who do you think your friends will be in retirement. These are the things that actually ultimately sort of define where are you going to live.
Oh, Jim, that's a tough one.
That's not funny, Marge.
Oh, wow. But no, the things that ultimately define sort of a successful retirement life or happy retirement life aren't just, I mean, yes, having enough savings will help. Being in good health will help tremendously. But again, who are your friends are going to be? Where are you going to live? How are you going to get from point A to point B? So it's a fulsome view of retirement preparedness, not just how much you've saved.
And it won't just be available at John Hancock.
Oh, no.
People will be available to the public.
We're going to publish it. We're going to do interviews about it. Maybe we'll come back
no,
and
we'd
talk
love
about
to
it.
talk to you
Yeah.
about it.
Okay.
Because we believe in longevity. By the
We
way,
do
I always
believe
say
in
in the
longevity.
studio, we are pro-longevity.
We're pro-longevity.
Yeah, we are.
That's right. I don't have an Apple Watch, though. Maybe I need to go to John Hancock and get my Apple.
Why don't you talk to
Apple
him?
Watch
He's
at
the
reduced
CEO
rate.
of the damn company, not me.
You wouldn't believe the stories now about the life-saving technology. We've had Apple Watches save people's lives, the fall detection thing, the AFib. We offer.
That's a I fall and I can't get up deal?
Sort of, kind of, yeah.
Oh.
No, it's not.
I've fallen. Do you want me to call 911? But
I need one of those.
But
too.
we're offering our customers preventative cancer screenings now. A company called Grail. I won't get into it now. I don't really have time. But if your your listeners are bored, Google a company called Grail and a test called Gallery. From a blood draw, they can detect the presence of over 50 types of cancer in your body. And we've offered that to our policyholders for 2 years now. We've had many. Two of our customers are going to speak at our symposium this week who found out that they have one stage 1, the other stage 2, early stage cancer by virtue of having this test. So pretty remarkable stuff. None of it foolproof. I'm not here to do an ad for it, but pretty remarkable stuff.
Okay, most importantly, before you go, we have Healy on Wednesday, and so do you. What time is she with you, please?
She's with us at 9, so
Oh,
we'll make sure she's with you in plenty. And right next door, I think. So, yeah.
Okay.
It's really good to meet you, Brooks.
Awesome.
I hope you come back. We are very interested in the topic.
Yes,
so
thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank
We've
you.
been speaking with Brooks Tingle, CEO of John Hancock, ahead of the second annual Longevity Symposium starting this Wednesday. And we're looking forward to having that index out soon. Okay, up next, we turn to the not-so-serious topic of dog ownership and isolation.
You have a dog?
I do. Pet ownership's a huge...
Do you take...
Yeah, it is.
Say that for a second.
Oh, wow.
The science says that pet ownership... I happen to be a dog lover, although there's a cat running around my house, too. That pet ownership is a huge factor in longevity. So,
What kind of dog do you have?
A Springer Doodle.
Ooh, a Springer
Everything's
Doodle.
got to have a doodle.
He was a little embarrassed to admit that.
So it's for good for people who have allergies, right?
It is. That one is.
That's
yes,
right.
yes.
Very good.
Thank you, Brooks.
Of course.
Thank you very much. Okay, up next, we are turning to the topic of dogs ownership. And we American.
Elizabeth Warren is seeking a third term in the U.S. Senate.
This is my whole life's work, how to help working families.
But challenger John Deaton thinks it's time for a change.
In the Senate, we need an independent voice.
From NEPM and GBH News, the Massachusetts Senate debate. We'll hear from the candidates on why they feel they should represent the Commonwealth and bring you exclusive post-debate analysis. Thursday night at 7, here on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Carr Financial Group, independent fiduciaries committed to guiding investors through the changing economy with wealth management, financial, and retirement planning services. Consultations can be scheduled at carrfinancial.com. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked number 1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan. We're live. We've never said this before. We've been live in the GBH studio in Brighton. We've never said we're streaming live from the GBH studio in Brighton. And we're going to be doing that every day, actually, starting today at youtube.com/GBH News. We started our debate series on the ballot questions with question 5 today. In the unconditional love of a canine companion. That's from reporting last week in the New York Times. One 41-year-old woman in this New York Times story about South Korea with no plans for kids says this about her decision. A human child may talk back and rebel. We've heard this a lot. But dogs follow you like you're the center of the universe. Meanwhile, this person, I hope I pronounced it right, Tove Danovich, is arguing in the Washington Post though we might be getting a little too comfortable bringing our dogs with us everywhere we go. Danovich writes that dogs can sap our attention, detract from our overall experience being out in the world, scaring away wildlife, making some people uncomfortable without necessarily bringing any benefits to our dogs who'd probably rather be at a dog park sniffing another dog's butt, for example. The number's 877-301-8970. Where do you land on the debate around dogs in public places? Are there public spaces that would benefit from the peace provided by the absence of a dog? Or does it offend you? It even suggests barring your dog. Name of the dog, I can't remember.
I don't know.
I love him in a way my mom loved me. Liam's owner, who's 34. I eat old food in the refrigerator, saving the freshest chicken for the dog.
Yeah, I know. It seems a little extreme. Here's another person who says the dog, one of them was convulsed with tears, and they talk about how they want to have the best possible going away for this little dog whose little face and little head they can still caress in its little blanket, even though it is no longer with us.
Okay, we're not talking about dead dogs. We're talking about living dogs. I don't know why Marjorie brought that up.
Because there's so many funeral homes for dogs.
Okay, fine.
Have you ever seen a funeral home for dogs?
No, I have not. No. Okay,
right.
Here we go. I can tell. Here we go.
But I think there should be one, actually.
Okay, fine. 877-301, a longevity thing for little dogs. And then when the longevity's over, you have a little funeral home. 877-301-8970. Marjorie has always got us off topic. There were two sort of approaches to this. In South Korea, apparently, because there's so much loneliness and so many people live alone, you take the dog everywhere. On the other hand, this person, Danovich, in the Washington Post today or yesterday, whatever, saying we're doing too much of this, taking our dog everywhere. Let it stay home or go outside to do what dogs do, but that's the extent. And that's the core question here, not whether we should have dog cemeteries or dog funeral homes.
We do have dog cemeteries. We have a great
I know,
big
but
one.
that's not what we're talking about. We have a lot of things we're not talking about, and that's one of them. We're talking about...
the funerals are featured prominently in the story.
877-301-8970. What's a proper place for a dog in your life, I guess, is the question there.
By the way, they have these Buddhist temples where they go with the dogs to pray. Did you see that too?
Yeah.
Usually you can't bring dogs into your church. But as the story says, the dogs were just souls wearing different shells in this cycle of life.
Exactly.
And they may switch cells in their next incarnation.
Okay, how about restaurants? Can we narrow this to restaurants so you get back on topic here? Assuming it's legal, and I can't remember, we had this discussion about a year ago, whether it's even legal in Boston to do it, but in some communities it's legal to take a dog. What do you think about having taken a dog to a restaurant?
Well, I don't know. If I was going out to an expensive restaurant and there was a dog sitting at the table next to me like they do in France.
That's right. In France, and they eat off the damn plate or something?
They eat off the plate. They're eating off the table. That might be a little much. And a lot of people are allergic to dogs.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have a dog-only section so the people who are allergic. That's why we were just hearing about poodle mixes, which are often, they're hair dogs.
By the way, this is... Nicole, our coworker. Here's my first dog, Luna, celebrating her birthday. I could have done more. Luna is wearing a festive scarf, a birthday hat on its head. There are balloons all over the place and decorations, a huge happy birthday sign, which I'm guessing Luna cannot read. But the answer is obviously Nicole's in one school of thought about how you treat your dog, and others are in others. Let's go to Valerie in Kittery. You're first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome, Valerie. Nice to talk to you.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm so glad to have this outlet to say this because my friends disagree with me. I have 3 dogs. I've always had dogs and cats. I love animals. I do animal portraits. So here's the thing, is that the department stores that are dedicated just to animals drives me crazy, which it's like a human thing where the jackets are here and the food is over here and the accoutrements are over here, but it's just for people to shop for animals.
Wait a minute. Where's this? I've never seen such a thing. I've seen little dog stores.
Well, I don't want to say the store, but...
Why don't you spell it then? Don't say it. Go ahead.
It's Petco.
Oh,
Petco.
Well, as long as we said we're not saying it. We're only spelling it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, not
Thank
saying
you.
it.
Appreciate it.
There's dozens of different names.
So
and I get it. I need leashes. I need a harness for my dog. I get it.
So it's the clothes that put you over the edge, Valerie? I'm trying to nail where this is going. What's the problem?
Well, what drives me
The
crazy
booties,
is, the
the
that
hats.
people go, they feel the need to go and shop there, which is their right and all.
Yeah.
Sure it
But
is,
when you compare us to other countries or to people that are broke, it just makes me crazy.
Well, apparently it does. Valerie, that was an excellent
Halloween
first call.
is
Thank you.
coming up.
Thank
Maybe
you.
you shouldn't spend more than $100 on your dog's Halloween outfit.
Did you used to buy a Halloween outfit for your dog?
I don't remember.
Obviously, that means yes.
I think when we sat on the porch, he might have had a little festive ensemble.
Oh, that's really cute.
Yeah. Okay.
877-301-8970. You know what we should really be talking about?
What?
What do you think of the fact that 40% of the people, more than 40%, we're going to get back to this topic in a second, of the people in South Korea live by themselves? Isn't that a huge number?
That's right. Well, the grandmother.
I know it's right.
It is a huge number. And the grandmother said, she was hoping that her daughter would have children so she could have grandchildren, but she's had to accept these various dogs as her grandchildren.
She has?
She has, and that's kind of the way it is. And they take them to the Buddhist temple on the weekends when they go in themselves to worship.
Ron in Mansfield, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Oh, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we still can. Go. You're doing great.
Okay.
Go.
My issue was, and I'm not a fan of dogs.
No.
But I recently had a bad experience where I had a dental appointment, and the dentist, who was the head of the practice, brought his dog to the office, and the dog got out of the room where he was, being kept. I mean, dogs are smart; they know how to do that.
Yeah.
And I dropped the dentist. The dentist blamed me and said, "Well, after all, the dog didn't bite you." I said, "No, he didn't. But this is not the place for a dog." So I think people have to use common sense about dogs. Certainly, a dog in a dental office is not the right thing to do.
But it wasn't like the hygienist or something, Ron, was it? Or just walking around, right?
Dog is cleaning your teeth.
This was this dog
Just
came up
walking
to
around.
me and sniffed me and all that stuff.
No, when you're in a dental chair, you don't want to be
I don't
sniffed.
think so.
I'm with you. Ron, thank you. Thank you for the
Yeah,
call. Would you want a dog in your dental office?
No, no, and I particularly would not want a dog as the hygienist cleaning my teeth.
Well,
That'd be a
he
little
said he
weird.
didn't say there was.
Julie in Orleans says, I
Julie
love
said.
dogs, but I'm allergic. Why do people like me have to share public spaces with people's pets? Dogs are beside me in airplanes, allowed way too many hotel rooms, restaurants, grocery shopping carts, etc. And listen to this.
What's
this
that?
is from John in Medford. A friend of mine had a little white dog that passed away recently, but she used to bring him everywhere. She brought him to Mass on Sunday in a large bag, and she was receiving communion when the dog barked and popped his little head out of the bag. But the priest was unfazed. He gave a blessing to the dog.
Wow, that's one of the most amazing stories I've ever
that
heard, wasn't it?
incredible?
Did you ever take your dog to
No,
the Mass or
I did
communion?
not.
Or?
No, I did not.
Communion was when you do the wine and the cracker
Yes,
thing, right?
it's
Okay.
the host, which
Host,
we call it.
sorry. Excuse me. I didn't mean that
Now,
disrespectfully.
they do
whatever.
have a blessing of the animals that allow
Oh,
Catholic
I know about
churches,
that.
though.
And the priests do that, right?
Yep.
What
I'm
is
sure
the
they have
point of that?
The dogs get blessed so that they will go
To
to
what?
dog heaven.
Oh, they really do?
After their funeral.
Is there really? I mean, do religions believe they're? I'm asking. I don't.
I think actually the Pope said, "Why not?"
No, he did not.
He
No,
did.
No, that was
Why
about
not?
gays and lesbians.
No,
that was not about dogs.
It's
He says,
true.
"Why not about everything?"
Why not about dog heaven?
Oh, is that really what he said? Or
Yeah.
are you just saying that?
We just said I was just talking about over there in South Korea. The dogs are just souls wearing different shells, and why couldn't their soul shell as a dog go to a person heaven when they were in a different shell?
Do you see is this Zoe who just wrote this? I assume. The first story I ever covered as a journalist was for the Salem News. I was a senior in high school. It was a pet blessing at a local church. We obviously haven't gotten very far because you did that then in high school, and we're doing this then now.
Listen to this. One of our texters has brought a shark hat for my dog for Halloween, but the person got it from an auction, and the proceeds benefits a local rescue facility. So there
Another
you
fabulous story. Tina in Cranston, you're next on Boston Public Radio. How are you, Tina?
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
I
Is
think
your
we're good.
favorite dog trainer?
Oh, you're the dog
behavior
trainer. Hey there. How are you?
Yes, I'm
Great
good.
to talk to you.
Look, I make a very decent living training dogs. I specialize in behavioral issues so that they can have a larger life. However, no dog needs to be in the grocery store except service dogs. There are many places that we should not have our animals. I can't take my cockatoos to the grocery store. Why is old lady Hannigan there with her 4 chihuahuas in the produce department? That's my 20 cents on this.
Well, wait a second. I'm assuming that dogs aren't generally allowed in grocery stores except service dogs. Isn't that true?
They're not. But that's true. But no one says anything because legally you're not allowed to ask if a dog is a service dog or what it is.
I see. Hey, Tina, don't go away because you sound like you really know what you're talking about. I need your opinion about something. When we're doing Pledge, which we're returning to tomorrow, so many people write in when they make a donation and say they really appreciate it because they get the facts here. It turns out Marjorie totally made up what she said.
I didn't totally make it up.
Excuse me, I'm talking to Tina here. What the Pope said. The Pope apparently, according to one of our colleagues, never said your pet is going to heaven. Are you offended that Marjorie misled the whole audience about what the Pope's position is on dead dogs?
Look, I'm offended that there's still a Pope in 2024, so maybe I'm not the person.
Oh, Tina, that's a better answer.
Ask this particular question.
Thank you, Tina. It's good to talk to you as always. Call us again soon.
Okay.
877-301-8970.
They say it was based on a misunderstanding of a translation, apparently.
So why'd you spread that?
But he also said that paradise is open to all of God's creatures. But that was apparently not said by Francis. It was said by Pope Paul VI. So maybe Pope Paul VI said they were open to all God's creatures.
Can you research that maybe after the show or what? I don't mean right now.
Quickly on the show. Matthew in upstate New York. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Matthew.
Yes. So I brief comment about the person who just spoke, the dog trainer. I agree about the service dogs. They should have a card. You can say this is a service dog instead of people just making that up.
Well, how many people are making it up though, Matthew?
I think a lot of them.
Okay, good.
You can send away for a service dog a little shirt.
How do you know that?
Because I know people have done it.
Okay, go ahead, Matthew. I was wrong. Go ahead.
Huge issue on airline.
Yeah.
You got people bringing an alligator, potbelly pigs, horses.
Yeah.
That I understand if you like the animal, but that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Now, can we all agree that a crocodile should not be on an airline? Can we all agree on that?
Or a horse.
Okay, a horse. Small
I don't
horse,
think it's
maybe.
happening very often.
No, probably not.
It's not, but
Okay.
And the alligator got away, so that's not happy either.
And ate the pilot.
Wait, the guy got away or the alligator got away?
The alligator got away. It slipped out of his house, and it disappeared into the woods. And I'm like, I'm sorry. That's unfortunate.
Okay. Well, Matthew, you taught us a lot. What? Is that it?
Kids.
That's it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
What? Okay.
Well, thank you.
I want to mention.
Wait, one more thing. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I've seen kids in restaurants and grocery stores that are not as well trained, as well behaved, or as clean as my dogs.
Well, there you go.
Well, that was a hell of an exclamation point at the end there, Matthew. Thank you. Mary in Burlington texts, there are dogs of all kinds in the Burlington Mall. She spoke to the mall police about it, but they say everyone says their dog is a comfort or service dog. I saw a dog pee in the mall. What do you think of that?
Outrageous.
Many years ago, we were babysitting for a dog, actually our tenant's dog, and the tenant was away for Thanksgiving. I told you this before. And we took the dog to a friend's house because it was very well behaved for Christmas. And the dog walked right over the Christmas tree and peed on it. So has that ever happened to you?
No.
Okay, fine.
No.
Oh, look.
Chris in Tiverton says, my wife and I have chosen not to have children, much to J.D. Vance's chagrin. What we do have is the love of our life, Ollie, whom we rescued 2 years ago. My wife makes him a birthday cake made from hamburger with sweet potato frosting and pea and ketchup topping, which he loves. We may be over the top, taking him out with us everywhere we go and throwing birthday parties, but he's essentially our child. And we love him.
I totally.
Chris is down with the South Korea philosophy.
I agree. Guess who's on the phone now?
Who's on the phone?
Liliana from Fall River.
Liliana from Fall River.
Where are you on the dog issue, Liliana?
Oh, I love every animal. We had 3 dogs.
Yeah.
I had 5 cats one time. They had kittens, and we put the notice in my husband's office, 3 kittens, and we got rid of them all.
Oh.
The mothers were not that happy. But anyway, I have now a companion dog. It's a little Shih Tzu.
Yeah.
He is the love of my life. My kids say, you treat her better than you treated us when we were children. And she's very spoiled. she tells me when I'm supposed to go to bed because she starts barking, and she goes towards the bedroom.
Oh, my God. Wait, is that true, Liliana?
Yes, she goes, woof, woof. And I said, Daisy, you have eaten enough. And she goes to the door to go to the bedroom, and I have to follow her.
That is beautiful. I love that.
But I have to tell you a story about this. We have the ashes of the 3 dogs.
Yeah.
Then, unfortunately, 4 years ago, my husband passed away, and Daisy was his companion.
Yeah.
And then we had the ashes. And so I went to the cemetery, and I said, can I put the ashes of the dog with my husband? And the guy said, oh, no, you can't. This is Oak Grove Cemetery, the beautiful cemetery we have in Fall River.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so I went to the funeral home, and I said, listen, I want the ashes of the 3 dogs in my husband's ashes. And he said, go right ahead. So I took a cup, a measuring cup, and I got a cup of Daisy. I got a cup of Peppy, cup of Bongo, and cup of Winnie, and I put it in a bag, and he put it in my husband's ashes. And now they are at the Oak Grove Cemetery, happy with my husband.
Liliana, you're a
was
sly
great.
dog.
Now,
That is a
Liliana,
fabulous story.
Do you believe dogs go to heaven?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
My baby Daisy, she's sweet. She was wonderful with my husband. She knew when he was upset. She knew when he was not feeling well. And I couldn't have asked for better because she jumped on the bed when he was very sick, and she stayed there with him until he died.
Liliana, you're
There
the
you
best.
go.
We love hearing from
Liliana,
you.
thank you very
Call
much.
soon again, Liliana. Thanks for telling us, sharing that story. We appreciate it. How about the dog barking and walking to the bedroom door, saying it's time to go to bed? How great is that?
It's very great. Here's a good text. I just want to say they had little hypoallergenic dogs at my childhood dentist, and it was the highlight of my life. I completely disagree with the curmudgeons complaining about dogs at the dentist as a child whose parents refused to get a dog, and those angelic floofballs at the dentist. Again, highlight of his
I'm sorry,
young
I'm
life.
with the caller from before. Do you want a dog jumping up on your lap, licking your crotch or something while you're sitting in a dental chair? I don't think so.
Well, you have to make sure it can't get that high, Jim.
Well,
Smaller
Betty in
dog.
Brighton, you're next on Boston Public Radio. How are you, Betty? Welcome.
Hi, not bad. Yeah, I've been listening, and I don't think it's being a curmudgeon to not want somebody's slobbering dog in a restaurant, in a grocery store where there's hot food served.
Good for
and
you.
I especially don't care for these dog nutters, like they're referred to on Reddit, letting their dogs crap on the sidewalk, and half the time they don't clean it up. It's a public health issue, and half the time they don't even put it in the little green bags. They just leave it there. One time I saw a lady let her dog poop on somebody's front walk going up to their house. So, you have to step in somebody's other dogs.
We're with you.
Just like you have to be responsible for your children, be responsible for your dog, too.
Betty, that was a lovely, concise call. Didn't we talk about that a week or so ago, about picking up after?
Yes, we did.
Did we do that? Okay.
We did.
Fine.
Here's Pat from West Roxbury. We had a bark mitzvah, for our 13-year-old golden retriever, Salty. He loved being the center of attention. He passed away a few months later. We were so happy to have celebrated with him before he left us.
Oh. By the way, one of our
little
colleagues...
dog read from the Torah, Jim.
That's beautiful. One of our colleagues said a dog dentist is helpful when you have peanut butter stuck on your teeth. Did you used to do that
That's
when your
right.
dog was alive?
Yes, I put
just to
peanut-
watch the dog?
I put
lick
peanut butter
its-
on the little Kong before I was going out.
Oh,
So
they
you have something
love
to
that.
do on the way out.
No, but you ever do it like feed him peanut butter so you could see him like do that licking thing
I did
nonstop?
not do that. No, I did not do that. Did you do that, Jim?
You're only at the dentist. I do it at the dentist, but let's do. Can we squeeze?
Texter wants to know
apparently
if dinosaurs go to heaven too, since they're one of God's
I
creatures.
don't know.
Are there any T-Rexes chasing people around?
I really don't know. And you know what my response would be? Why not? Isn't
Why
that what you
not?
said the Pope said when you made that
Yeah,
up?
I didn't make it
Let's
up.
go to Janice and Beverly.
Hi,
Go.
Janice.
Hi, Janice. You only have a minute. Go ahead.
Hi. I have had 3 rescue dogs,
Yeah.
and I've been single for a long time.
Yeah.
But I have never dressed up my dog,
No.
spending money on frivolous
Yeah.
stuff. But I've trained them and worked with them so that they could be just about anywhere, except for the grocery store, etc. And what I think is really important is for people to get a hold on training their dog and picking up after them, which they don't always do. I just think it's important to be able to read a dog, read their behavior, train them according to their predisposition.
You sound like a dog whisperer kind of thing.
Yeah.
You have a close relationship with dogs. Yeah, it's good. Janice, thanks for the call. We're out of time. We really appreciate
Tommy
it.
from New Hampshire says his
What'd he
dog
say?
Lucas, when he was alive, lost him a year ago, but last May, take him around walks until he died. He would pee on every Trump sign he saw. Now there's a smart dog, says Tommy from New Hampshire.
It's beautiful.
I guess he's not a fan of the former president.
It's a beautiful
Anyway,
way to end the
thank
day.
you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow we're going to have the debate on our...
It's the middle of the GBH Fall Membership Drive, but we're taking the day off from the long pledge breaks. More news, less fundraising. We hope you'll pitch in to fund the news by giving now, online at gbhnews.org. Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Rockland Trust